Please stop!
Recording. Okay, I think we're good. First of all, I'm going to start by asking you questions.
Oh, crap. Okay.
Have you finished the game?
Have you played it yet?
Are you done with it? Did you complete it?
Wait, have you played it?
I hope you play it till the end and let us know.
You've played the whole game.
I finished it last night, or like 2 a.m.
Oh, you did?
So I probably should have left that. I clocked a little under 30, I think, when all was said and told.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts?
I mean, this is just where it just sounds like a fanboy. It's incredible.
But overall, you liked it.
That's an understatement, my friend.
Okay, that's good.
It was incredible. Absolutely. I can't believe it was a PlayStation 4 game. Like, I don't know what you all did. Every moment I was like, well, this is a beautiful game. And then I get to a new set piece in a new area and I'd be like, this is a beautiful game. Like, I couldn't. The amount of times I played around in photo mode too before realizing I should let a professional do it. Welcome back to the official The Last of Us podcast. I'm Christian Spicer. Up until this point, we've been covering the story of the first game with the people who made it. But now we're moving on to the second game. And these next few episodes are going to be a bit different. Instead of the beat-by-beat conversations we had for part 1, in these next 4 episodes, we'll be doing a larger overview of the making of and really hone in on our 2 main protagonists, Ellie and Abby. You're still going to get insight from Neil, Ashley, and Troy, but you're also going to get to hear from Part 2 co-writer Hallie Gross, the voice of Abby, Laura Bailey, and many other people behind this new installment of The Last of Us. The game's been out for a few weeks now, so we've all had a chance to play it, but please know there are going to be spoilers in these discussions. Proceed at your own risk. When did you know that you were going to make a part 2?
Yeah, there isn't like this one moment necessarily. Like, as we're making the first game, where we haven't even finished the first game, you start like really understanding these characters and who they are, what makes them tick, and you can't help but think about their lives outside of that story, whether it's before or after. And like in my mind, Joel's arc was pretty much done. I didn't know where else to take that character, but with Ellie, it felt, at least at the time, like it's going to be ripe for all these other stories. And then we finished production. We already had like an outline for Left Behind. I finished that outline before we finished actually The Last of Us Part 1. So I knew exactly when this finishes, here's what this DLC is going to be. But at the same time, I started thinking about ideas for the next game. And a lot of them were very plot driven. Like, it was like, okay, what's a cool situation to put Ellie in? And it was like, oh, what if she heard someone else was immune and she's going to go on this journey to find this other person that's immune? And none of them, like, it felt like interesting, again, from a plot standpoint, interesting twists and turns, and you could do a lot of fan service. Joel's going to chase her, and now they're going to be teamed up together, and the lie is going to come into play because of what she's after. But it felt like it was missing the thing that I think was successful in the first game, which is this emotional heart, this like very simple universal concept of love. Can we make you feel the unconditional love a parent feels for their child? And I was like, without that, I felt like it could be an exciting story, but it won't capture that emotional resonance that the first game had. And then kind of left it for a while and then came back to it with this concept of hate, of this, again, this very universal feeling that all people experience, which is just deep hate, where you're willing, in your mind, you're willing to commit horrible acts of violence against another human being. Like, I lived in a civilized society, I considered myself to be a pretty easygoing guy, and my mind was easily able to go there from people I don't even know. Now, what would happen if something like that happened to someone I love? How far would my mind kind of go down this downward spiral? And is there coming back from that? And all these interesting philosophical questions started bubbling up, and it felt like, again, this universal emotional truth. And I was like, this is it. This is that core I've been searching for and haven't been able to find. And once I had that, everything fell into place. And I mean, like within like a couple of weeks, I had the rough outline that is pretty close to what the final game ended up being. So by the time I was talking to Ashley Johnson and telling her the story of Left Behind, we met up in a restaurant. And I was like, okay, we got that story. And she was like asking all these questions. She was really intrigued by it. And then I was like, okay, I have this other story for you. Like, it's really rough. And I walked her through that story. And like by the end, she's like crying and people are looking at us all weird in this restaurant. But it felt like...
She throws her water on your face and walks out.
Yeah. That was the first validation that there was, like, seeing her reaction. That was a validation that there was something there to keep developing.
There was a part of me that was thinking going in, maybe call me cynical as well, just like, I'm sure this will be great, but, like it can't live up to it. There's no way. And then as the chapters or, the moments clicked away, it's just, it's stunning. And the best way I can compare it, and I don't mean this to sound just full of hyperbole, but it's kind of like I have two kids. I love them both completely. I don't have a favorite. Like they both bring something new to the table. And I think for me, the magic of the story of part 2 is that it brings something new to the table. It's not the expected sequel. It's not safe. It's challenging. I found myself not liking what was happening. I found myself questioning why these characters are in these situations and what I would do if I were them. And I found myself needing to put the controller down and walk away, only 2 moments later be like, I gotta get back to this. I gotta see. And I think what struck for me was that it is through this generation now that this is the world they know. This violence, this perpetual fear. The old world never existed for them. While in part 1, with Joel as the main protagonist, I kept seeing the world through what was lost. And now there's this whole group of young adults who never knew that, and seeing their world and their life was very powerful for me.
What's up with all these posters?
It's a bunch of comics. Wait, what was happening here?
A gathering for people who were really into this stuff. Like you, basically.
We were born in the wrong time, man.
First of all, thank you. Those are very nice thoughts. Your analogy to having 2 kids is great. I wish I had that at the beginning of production to describe it to the team. I don't know if there was ever a conscious decision, actually, to say, okay, now we're just going to view the world through people that have never experienced our world. It just kind of happened. The reason also we went with like late teens, early 20s, it's like people in that age feel invincible. And they feel righteous, and they feel like they understand how the world works. And it's a maturation plot, like Ellie and Abby and all these people evolve through these horrible acts.
My name is Hallie Gross, and I am the co-writer and narrative lead on The Last of Us Part 2. So I got hired to be a writer on the game with Neil, and I was brought in super early to help him break the story, outline it, figure out scenes and characters and the whole shebang. And then I ended up getting the narrative lead title like 2 years into my role at Naughty Dog, when I started to take on sort of larger responsibilities and basically being Neil's tiny loudmouthed shadow.
What was the collaboration process like? You mentioned it a little bit.
So I think Neil and I have like very, very similar tastes. We agree, I would say, on like 80% of things. So a lot of it was trying to just plus each other and go, okay, we'd identify a problem to solve, or, a narrative thing that we wanted to figure out in a day or in an hour or in a 10-minute stretch. And then we would just keep trying to find the best, most interesting version, something you haven't seen before, or something that feels on theme or true to character. And there was very little ego about it. It was just whoever's idea we both thought was best, that would be the one that ended up on the card. And then, when we opened that conversation up to more people in the studio, there was also the like, okay, we're going to try and sell you on this idea and pitch you on this idea. But a lot of great ideas came from designers and artists. And it was very much about like opening the circle up progressively, bringing in cooler ideas, better ideas, ideas that worked more with the fact that we were making a game, not a movie or a TV show, mechanics that wanted to get involved, scenes or settings that wanted to get explored, and building it holistically. So mostly, yeah, I think Neil and I started out relatively polite with each other, but by the end, it's just us yelling at each other that the other one is stupid, but still going, okay, but that was a good idea. Fine.
So what was that transition then like from traditional screenplay writing to game writing, and kind of what was that like for you?
Well, there's a couple different facets to get into, but I'd say just on the writing front, initially it was very, very similar. I have come up in rooms and breaking stuff collaboratively. So when I walked in, Neil had these big tentpole kind of ideas of the story, some of which have radically changed. And so my job was that connective tissue and helping him sort of find the vision that he wanted. So I just carted stuff up on a board. We started pitching ideas to each other, throwing things out, trying things on. And so all of that felt really similar to writing a 10-episode season of television. It started to get different when we broke it out, we didn't think about gameplay versus cinematic beats or narrative beats. We just said, what's the story arc? And obviously you have to keep in mind, like, okay, we've got to figure out how to have a lot of enemies that you kill, but we weren't thinking in terms of gameplay. So then once he and I had shapes that we felt were like close, we would bring in some designers.
My name is Kurt Marganow. I'm a co-game director on Last of Us Part 2.
My name is Anthony Newman, and I am the co-game director on The Last of Us Part 2.
I'm curious if we could step back a little bit, and if you could just talk a little bit about what, and maybe specifically at Naughty Dog, or more generally if you'd like, but what game directing is, and what that role is, and what you do in it.
Yeah, that's definitely one that is going to be different for every studio. I guess on the highest level, the way that I would describe what a game director does is like to oversee and be like the final approval or overseer of like the gameplay of the game. And I guess specifically really helping and driving how the narrative is integrated into gameplay. Like I found my job at the end of the game, or for most of the game really, to exist for people to ask questions to.
What was the biggest challenge that you remember that you faced in directing on Last of Us 2, aside trying to work with Anthony, which I hear is just, really...
that was a challenge, like finding those roles, having two people share that role, which is a first for Naughty Dog.
Working with Kurt was really interesting, and Kurt I call Kurt the godfather of script because so many of our methodologies or our best practices, what we teach new scripters to do, were things that he discovered via trial and error on Uncharted 2. And those kind of best practices have, lasted us these 10 some years. And it's, to me, I think one of the things that really makes Naughty Dog games stand out, and like how we're able to handle player interactions gracefully and stuff. And that like Naughty Dog attention to detail that everybody talks about, so much of that comes from the fact that we have this very flexible scripting language. And if someone sees something that they don't like or want to improve upon, we can make those kind of atomic improvements. So much of that lineage, I think, comes from Kurt's work on Uncharted 2. And we kind of have this kinship of that early history together.
I don't know how many hours I was into it, but at least a couple before I saw the run to jump to prone animation, where instead of going to crouch first, then prone. And I don't know if that literally saved my character's life a few times after I found it, but I loved it. I'd be booking it towards tall grass, and I would just do that dive into prone, and it was so satisfying. And like the little, this is where I'm just like a fanboy now for a little bit. The little touches, the moments of like, so I'm Ellie and I do that, and then I'm going to draw out my bow, because I don't want to give away this position I just kind of fought to find. And the way she then rolls over to pull it, like it feels very real. And even in those moments of it's a gameplay mechanic change of I'm in this position of hiding to now I need to be armed for combat, it still felt like a moment that was how it would happen. And I'm curious how you all kind of balanced that or made those decisions to, what is real? Breaking glass, I'm going to, use my elbow if I have it, or the butt of my gun, or roll over or reload is a different animation. And reaching up to a drawer to get something is different than down.
I'm glad you bring up the pickups system because that was like such a big push. It's kind of a tech that we had that we started experimenting with on Uncharted 4, but we really embraced, which is like this partial animation system. So like you can play an animation on the top half of the character, but not the bottom half. So the result of which is like, it just looks like I'm grabbing shit and putting it in my backpack. And it looks realistic like I would in the real world, be able to pretty easily walk past something, pick it up while I'm moving and put it in my backpack, but something that is really hard in a video game to do. Another one is like the straps on the guns on Ellie and Abby. So on Uncharted 4, we're like, well, let's have the strap on the gun so that it actually sits and rests and the strap goes across his body. And when he pulls the gun out, the strap hangs and dangles with physics. It's like, well, we did it for Uncharted 4, so why not? We'll bring that over into Last of Us.
Well, now you did manual rope recoil also. So if we ever go back to Nate throwing a rope, I'm not gonna. He's got to wind it back up. Even if I throw it halfway through my rewind, you keep setting the bar higher for yourself.
So you did notice that you could throw the rope before she's done coiling it, because a lot of people they'll just politely wait for her to finish coiling the rope all the way.
Oh no, I get myself into some situations. I don't have time to politely wait.
Yeah, the rope stuff was really cool and let us do some more traversal stuff and some interesting puzzles like throwing ropes over stuff.
It was so great. Breaking the glass, throwing the rope through, just so fun. It just felt so good.
The breaking glass was such a big win for us, for how technically difficult it was, and to how many different ways we were able to integrate that with level design. And we just always had in the back pocket, well, it's a piece of glass, you could shatter it. Oh, when you shatter glass, it makes noise, so it can alert enemies. So we can create really tense scenarios where the only way to get into a space is to shatter the glass. You're gonna have to make noise. You're gonna have to alert the enemies.
That's one of those things that sounds so deceptively simple. The big challenge about making a game like The Last of Us is to develop fresh and interesting game mechanics, but we have to kind of make do with things that are as realistic as possible. And breakable glass was just the perfect one of those, because suddenly you have all these puzzles where it's how can I use this breakable glass to get around to a locked door or something like that. You can put pickups behind breakable glass or resources, and the player has to hit the glass in order to get the resources behind them. But hitting that glass makes a noise, which could attract enemies. So when an enemy takes cover behind a pane of glass and they want to shoot at you, they'll take cover there and then they'll quickly stand up and break it with their elbow before they start aiming at you. So it's just another way for different systems in the game to interact with each other. And then when a shambler explodes and blows up all the glass, or one of your bombs goes off and stuff, that was really something we looked for. And I think doors were another good example of that, of these ways that we could take something simple from the real world that has these affordances that you understand right away, but nonetheless can create these very interesting moments.
For me, day one, on the first, I'm trying to remember just the first time I heard the idea of Joel is going to die early in the game and he's going to be killed by someone that was affected by what Joel had done. I think even originally it wasn't even the doctor from the first game. It was a little section of something between that 20-year gap in The Last of Us 1, where Tommy and Joel were smugglers and they were doing fucked up shit, and that they killed someone, and then this person came back, and that was going to be the playable opening of the game, was that thing where he kills them. And then it was reworked and brought in the actions of the first game becoming the impetus for the story of the second game was super, super compelling. And taking that moment that everyone that was probably the most controversial part of the first game, was the doctor scene and like killing the doctors, being forced to kill the doctor, to kill the other two doctors. This obviously the biggest choice, the biggest thing that Joel does in that game, and making that the entire reason that the second game exists was like, once that connection was like made, it's like, oh, that's way cooler. But also like, this is kind of the inciting incident of the whole story, the whole thing that kicks Abby on her journey. So it's important to see that.
Abby. No! Abby, don't look. Dad! Dad! No! No!
Neil and others have described this as maybe Naughty Dog's most divisive. So you're not only coming into The Last of Us, this game that means so much to so many people, you're also putting them through the ringer on it. It's not the safe, expected sequel if there was one.
No, absolutely not. When Neil pitched me what he had 4 years ago, he had And Then We Killed Joel right out the gate. And that actually was one of the things that really excited me about it. I was like, whoa, that's such a ballsy, brave turn. And then there's so much frontier to explore. There's no expectations at that point because, everything, all your preconceived notions about the relationship between these two people is out the window. So to me, it was incredibly exciting. But also, yeah, it's a huge, vocal, supportive community. You want to, make something that moves them, but I think Neil has always been really good, and the studio's always really been good about saying, like, we're not trying to replicate the first game. And I think a safety net that I've always had is I'll just blame Neil. I'll just blame Neil for anything people don't like. I'll just say, that was Neil. What do you want me to do? I work for the man. What can I do?
I recall Hallie first coming on the project, and my office has like a cork wall that I put index cards on. And I'm like, all right, here's the story.
It says like, kill person players love, kill other person players love. And that's just pinned up there.
And I'm like, that's all I have. Now let's figure out it's not too dissimilar from what I had. So I'm like, here's the beginning. Here's this beat in the middle where we swap like who we play. Like, we're going to head to this part of the country. I don't know what part. We're going to spend some time there. We're going to see the story from both perspectives. And here's the end. I don't have anything else. So let's start figuring it out. So I remember that even back then, which is around when we finished Uncharted 4, that was what we knew, and knew that we had wanted to spend a relatively short time compared to the first game in this one area. And then which area to go to became a bigger conversation with art and design to say, okay, because we're going to spend so much time in this one city, potentially, it has to be a Naughty Dog game. Pacing is very important to us. And by pacing, I mean it's varying up the kind of gameplay that you're doing. So it can't all be combat. It can't all be conversations. It can't all be cutscenes. It's about switching these things up. It's about switching up the art. So we need a variety of looks. And we could use weather. We could use architecture. But we needed a city that was interesting. Interesting from an aesthetic point of view, but also interesting from a design point of view. So what kind of shapes can this place afford us? And again, Seattle's interesting because it's very hilly. You got all these slopes, which create for more interesting level design with a lot more verticality and shifts and changes. And then we can, like, because it rains there, we could flood it. So Seattle became this very exciting place pretty early on in production. And I talked a little bit about this earlier when we talk about where the idea came from, which was when you start making a sequel, then now there's people think they know. I hate this term franchise, what the franchise means. I feel like franchise should only be like a term used by marketing people. And you could say, okay, the first game was successful, so let's deconstruct it into these beats or this template, and that'll be the roadmap of how we capture that success again. But to me, that is a recipe for disaster. Meaning it's like, at best, you could come close, because you will never replicate the freshness of that journey by just going on the same journey. You might get a beat that's like, oh, that's kind of like the giraffe beat, or like that, oh, that's kind of like the David beat, and I'm seeing the structure now. And so instead, it was like very early on, we said, we're not going to replicate the first game. meaning even the pacing of the first game, I think the first game has more of a cinematic movie pacing to it, just the way it keeps ratcheting it up and keeps like getting more and more and more and more intense. With this game, I wanted to have more of like a good novel that you get lost in, that there's going to be moments of like rest where things don't have to keep ratcheting it up, because we're going to have those moments as well. And that's where I had the idea of like the farm sequence very early on. I was like, I wanted to just have, what is it like to just live in this world without combat, and how can we make you experience that on the stick? So knowing we have those moments, knowing that, for example, one of the parts from the first game that people talk about all the time is the opening. How like people have said like, oh, that's one of the best video game opening ever. And I was like, okay, we're not going to try to replicate that. There's no way we're trying to like top that. We got to do something different. And it's very purposeful to have like the opening, you know, it's just you riding a horse with Joel, and it's calm, and it's just giving you a sense of the world, and it's Joel gifting Ellie this guitar, and we spend like a few minutes just him playing a song.
Some folks call this thing here a guitar.
Funny.
Where like all your instincts of like telling these kind of action stories, like, no, you got to start with a bang. You got to, and it's like, no, let's fight that instinct. We're telling a different kind of story here, and let's throw up the logo after this moment of connection between these two characters, because so much of the story is about this connection.
Well, that didn't suck.
She's yours.
No. No. I don't know the first thing about this.
I promised that I'd teach you how to play.
You did.
So that kind of allowed us to play with pacing in a different way, to say, okay, what, and that's where note cards again is so important, because you can throw the whole game up on the wall and look at it and be like, okay, we have too much combat here, let's shift things around. Oh, we have too many downbeats, let's shift around. Oh, there's not enough space between these flashbacks. How can we create more space? And like so much of that work is pacing, is storytelling, to say, is the story evolving in this area? Like, or do we just have a sequence that's cool, but it's not really doing anything for us, for the characters, and we should really consider cutting it?
No, 100%. I mean, it felt like I had these moments where I was just the character, and one of the notes I wrote down, because I couldn't talk to anybody about this, was this game, it's one of the rare games where I wasn't running when I didn't need to. So many games, and games I love, I'm holding down the run button, you know, because I'm going through it. And my play of part 2, I rarely, if ever, did that. I think the time I can remember running, but not because I was impatient or trying to get to the next beat. I felt like that's what the character would have done, is when Ellie came back to the farm with the rabbit and I see the horse out front, and Tommy's horse. I ran with the character then, because I felt would be interested in like, oh, what's happening? We don't get visitors that often. What is this moment? But for the most part, I was in the world, taking in these moments of exploration and wonder and experiencing these things.
I'm Alexandria Naonaiki. When we talked before on part 1, I was primarily UI. On part 2, I was character concept artist.
Let's start there, because in terms of character concept art and what it entailed for this game, the characters are all grounded and real and different, and whether it's Ellie's physique versus Abby's versus Dina's versus Owen compared to Manny, like they all are all people. So I'd love to kind of talk to you about your process for character design in a game where many of the characters we've seen before, they've aged, but then also bringing in new characters into the world and kind of what that process is like.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're really narrative driven, and because of that, super character driven, like they're very character centric games. So it is different, I guess, from quite a lot of other games that don't tend to put such a heavy emphasis. And I think that shows in like the detail on the characters and like the thought that went into it. My lead on this project was Ashley Swedowski. She's the character lead at Naughty Dog on Last of Us 2. And she really had like this very clear vision right from the very beginning, working with John Sweeney, the art director, of like kind of how we wanted these characters to move through the story and to be influenced by the story. Everything from their costuming, like the colors of their costuming, the patterns that were on certain shirts, down to like how much blood they collect over the span of like the time spent in Seattle, for instance, with Ellie. Like we would go into super specific detail on like, she got this cut at this time. To prevent it from being too distracting, we're going to heal it this much. And like I would do like individual like concepts all the way through of degrees of damage she's taken and like what happened to her clothing after that fight. So it was we were like involved from the very beginning all the way to the very end in detailing all of this out and really trying to make them feel as real as possible. You know, the blood actually like interacts with rain, which had nothing to do with character as much as to do with VFX. Like something like that level of detail, the amount of tech and like the amount of people that have to go into building a system like that is astronomical.
Do you have a favorite moment and maybe a favorite moment in the game, and then also maybe a favorite moment you worked on seeing it realized in game?
Yeah, so my favorite one I worked on is pretty easy. It's the museum with Joel. I love natural history, and so I like, apart from doing character, I'll also do like kind of narrative heavy spaces. I'll help set dress them.
So you put hats on dinosaurs, is what you're telling me.
There was a designer who came up with that that idea, but that was awesome. Obviously, again, team effort with everything. But I chose all the dinosaurs and like where they were in the rooms, and I like went with outsourcing to count all the vertebrae and make sure that they were all accurate and all that. And just picking like the different spaces in the museum, which is a type of space that I really love to be in. And that's that moment that I feel like fans of the first game, they'll really crave, so that when they get to it, it had to be very soft, but still amazing to look at and exciting and like full of stuff that people want to explore, because that's your like tender moment with him that, I mean, I know I even crave. By the time you get to it, it's like, yes, we got some Papa Joel time.
Did you know this was here?
Oh, you don't like it. We can head back.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, it's like a nice soft moment, and I think we don't have very many of those in this game, but when they're there, I feel like they're much more impactful for it. I also just love all the fooling around with Dina, like all the joking around with her when Ellie plays that song for her, the Take On Me song. I liked that one a lot.
What was that? Nothing.
Well, nothing sure sounds nice.
This game's massive. I believe it's 2 discs if you get it physical.
It's like 30 hours or something.
It is massive. So I'm curious, was it massive for you as well in terms of the art asks and the undertaking, or is it every game is, 10,000 hours of art, even if the game's only 5 hours long?
No, this was huge. This game was so big for all of us and felt very overwhelming. And to talk a little bit about some of the struggles people had, is one of the things that I heard a lot is so many concerns it was just too long. Like we had too much to do, and it didn't feel like we were going to be able to hit the mark and get the quality that we wanted at different points in the project, where it was like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. Like, I forget, Ashley told me how many costume changes Ellie has. I think it's a number that's wild. It was like 15 or something like that through the whole thing, because like anything you change, like when you put the little jacket on her in Seattle when it rains, where she like puts her hood up, which is a detail that I really love. I love that they got that in.
It's so
but
good.
That's a whole costume change. Like there's not just a whole lot of characters. They all have different costumes. They all have hair sets like unique to them. Like they all like a few different types of hairs. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but Dina in Festival's hair looks different than Dina like out on patrol with Ellie. Not on patrol, but when she goes to Seattle with Ellie. That's a completely different thing. Abby's got wet hair, or they all have wet hair versus dry hair for when it rains, when they get in the water, all that stuff. So it's just like, as I sit here and talk about it, I'm sweating. I mean, it's really hot here today. It's like 90, but I'm just sweating thinking of like, wow, that was so much work. And it, for us, like at this time, it only just kind of like we're in the ramp down now from it being fully final. And we're in that stage of it where it's just like, you kind of sit back and you're like, oh my God, how did we do that? Like, because other people be like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like,
I'm curious if, in whether it's personal experience or others on the team, kind of talking about how Abby and Ellie are both similar and how they're both different. These are two women that are kind of about the same age bracket. Similar experiences to some extent, where experiencing this great loss and being born post-outbreak, and this is the world they know, and kind of the design of those characters to have them feel like different characters and not a palette-swapped Ellie, for example, or something like that.
Yeah, it hurts my guts a little bit with Abby because I feel like when you're playing through, it's like, I think they'd be friends. Like, I think in a different world, they would really like each other or maybe be a little bit competitive with each other or I could see them liking each other if the situation was different. Like, they both have very similar values. Abby said to her dad, like, if it was me, I'd want you to sacrifice me. And that's very Ellie. Like, they seem to be so similar. Obviously, Abby's a lot bigger than Ellie. There's like the physical difference between them, which kind of harkens a little bit to like the Joel versus Ellie from the first one. Like, Ellie's a bit more nimble and like slight, and Abby's like hits like a tank. So there's obviously some gameplay differences with them. But I think personality-wise, I felt like the writing team did a good job of showing that they're both like really stubborn, really driven, really passionate people. And it's like true that sometimes when you come up against like a person just like you, like they're the hardest ones to deal with. So yeah, I feel like visually we kept them obviously very separate, but I felt like their personalities were quite similar. And while Ellie went to a very dark place, Abby was able to kind of pull herself a little bit out of that earlier and sort of like maybe jolt Ellie in that direction as well. Like, they both kind of went into these ups and downs of lightness and darkness throughout that end set there.
You've written some very nuanced, deep characters who are not afraid to be violent, women who are not afraid to be violent, which, you know, even today, I would say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, very different in terms of how we accepted that as a society. And now we're seeing more of it, not enough, but more of it. But I'm curious what that's like for you as a creator to write these characters that aren't afraid to let an axe fly.
You know, I love writing violent characters. I started out writing comedy, but I got into film and television professionally on writing action. I think there's something incredibly interesting to how base it is, how it is this language for people who maybe don't know how to use their words. You know, it is a language for people who have not necessarily been able to develop super mature ways of communicating in the world and addressing their feelings. And I think we're all guilty of, like, you know, the amount of iPhones I threw in my 20s into walls, you know, is really real because I didn't know how to self-soothe or whatever. I love examining violence because I think it is the epitome of survival and like the desperation of survival and this feeling of such disenfranchisement. Like, if someone's throwing a punch or throwing an axe, because they probably fucking need to. And if they don't, that's also a really interesting conversation as well. I like that heightened world. I like talking about trauma and survival and resiliency, and a world in which the violence is more on the surface makes those conversations, I think, clearer for people, a little much easier to understand when you're speaking on a grand scale, where it's like, oh, I mean, they have to, you know, we kill outsiders because they're scary. It's like, okay, but then when you're speaking in those hyperbolic terms, I don't have to sit there and spend a half an hour giving you the nuance of the struggles with the WLF. It's like, no, this is a nice way that feels black and white. And I think women, especially women who've grown up in violent worlds, like can be or can have just as violent impulses as men and can be traumatized by that violence. It is universal in a way. I love badass women.
My name is Almudena Soria, and I'm co-lead animator at Naughty Dog. This time around, I'm now a co-lead, so my time is more spent on the supervisory type of things. So we redid all the locomotion system, and we based it on motion matching, which is a technique that was used before, but we made it our own. So we took all those concepts and we developed our own system that is actually very, very complex and only a few people at the studio understand. So that was a massive challenge. And I'm very proud of what the team achieved, like how everyone came together and managed to make a great game that is responsive, that looks grounded, that has weight, and being able to do that not just with humans, not just with Ellie, but with enemies, with dogs, and with horses. We motion capture horses and dogs, which was as well like something we've never done before. So this game, part 2, is full of new things we've just taken on. And we knew the game was going to be big, but when we were finishing, or even towards the middle, we were like, this is bigger than big. This is just big and huge. And I don't think there's a word to describe that.
I'd love to talk about like the animations of what I've kind of internally been calling in my head the Ren and Stimpy moments, which I don't know if you watched that cartoon, where in Ren and Stimpy, there'd be like the wide shot, and then they'd cut in for the close thing, and it'd be like very detailed of, usually a grotesque thing in Ren and Stimpy. And in Last of Us Part 2, it's stunning. At all times, it's stunning. But those scenes when we see their fingers playing guitar on the frets, on the strings, mind-blowing. And you all are not only showing the hands, it is zoomed in with the fidelity and authenticity that's just asking for people to criticize it. Like if there's anything wrong in it, it's focused. The gamer's attention is focused on that. I'd love for you to talk about kind of how you manage those different types of perspective from an animating standpoint and an art standpoint of how you kind of create those hyper-focused settings and then are able to pull out from that and go into the more traditional third-person gameplay.
Yeah. So that's done very early on in the project. We start with the trailer. So that would be the first trailer we saw where like Joel walks in and like sees Ellie playing guitar. All that tech was developed back then. That was, like how do we come up with these hands that are more real? Because hands are very, very hard to rig, to model, to make it look believable, the knuckles and squishy fingertips. So all that was developed with the TD team and the cinematic team to come up with something that could be animated, that could, feel like the strings are pressing against the fingertips. So it's a back and forth to get that look. Once the look is established, then it's easier to propagate to different characters. But definitely it took time. Not just the guitar and the fingers, also the facial. Like we redid this time, the facial rig was completely redone from Uncharted 4, just to be able to be more, to have more fidelity. And then also like muscle deformations. Like if we see the hanging scene when Abby gets hanged. Like we see like the veins and the face getting red. So it's like, that's very hard to do. But that grounds the player into believe that it's in this world and everything has consequences and feels what the players are feeling. Getting red, eyes bulge. So it's all a collaboration. TD's, Neil's vision, cinematic team, and then feedback from the whole studio, effects, shaders, character artists. So it's not just animation, it's all the departments together.
Part 1 certainly had its memorable animal moments. The giraffe and monkeys, I think, jump out for a lot of people. And I'm curious what the process was for Part 2 to make them a bigger part of the game, certainly with the horse and dogs. And I'm curious what that experience was like and how you brought that greater realism to the game and to those types of creatures or animals.
It all comes back to being a hero character, the horse and the dogs. So we thought we need to motion capture this to bring it to the realism. So we went that route, and that was challenging, but it was super fun. It was really interesting what the limitations are, having a smaller space, you couldn't get to full screen, so we had to make some tweaks to make that happen, So we motion capture, but we also have a very talented animation team that takes that data and needs so much adjustments. And it gets complex and more complex with animals. But I have to say that the result, I think it speaks for itself in not just horses, but also the dogs. The in-game facial system is something that it came together pretty late, but it adds so much to Part 2 compared to any other game we've made. Like the players and the NPCs and the bodies and the enemies have emotions, so they could, if they're saying a line when they're smiling or like they're laughing, they would communicate that on the facial expressions. And like from the dialogue team, where they decided that they wanted to like call the enemies by name, which means that gives such a you're gonna kill someone because you have to in this world, but they have a name and they have friends like you have. So everything, it just makes the experience so much more robust.
A moment that has stuck with me, and the first time it happened, I was like, did I just hear what I thought I heard? And I was out getting my revenge, and I got my revenge on an individual, and then someone else yelled out, like, they killed Sarah! And I was like, oh, I did kill Sarah. These are people. They're not just not idle animating things that you go and take out. It's like they have a life. And even, Soldier 114, now I know is Sarah. She has someone that she cares about and that cares about her. And I killed her.
Brooke? God damn it, where are you? Amir? You with me? Come on. Someone took out Amir! Someone's out there! Spread out!
It's incredible. It's emotionally traumatizing, but in all the right ways. And there's a theme that I feel kind of runs through it of revenge, certainly, and violence, the cycle of violence. But I also feel like I keep hearing versions of you got to find something to fight for. You got to have a reason to fight. And I think in game, the way I've kind of interpreted that is you have to have a reason to live. But I also think characters in this brutal world take it literally and fight. Like they are fighting. And I'm left with the feeling of, is any of that worth it? Is any of it worth it? And I don't know if I have an answer, which makes all those difficult moments prior to that more difficult.
To me, that's what the games are about. At least the games we make, they're meant to mean something. Like if you end up playing a game and then you finish it and then there's no emotion or there's no investment, there's no care about anything, then it's to me, I wouldn't be satisfied. So if I'm playing a game and it evokes these reactions, it's when like your brain start working. You want to play it. You want to keep playing to see what happens, whether it's right or wrong. You're living this journey with, in this case, with Ellie. You're living this journey with these characters, and that's what you're going through. Is this? There has to be conflict at some point, but we give the stealth tools to be able to avoid and make your own decisions. And like, if you don't want to do it, maybe you don't have to. Maybe you can really, really find ways around those difficult moments. And I understand that we try to give every character a purpose, even when we have these crowd sequences or like these populated areas. Those are so hard because it's like, okay, how do we populate this with this amount of people that they are having a purpose in this world? And believe me, that is not an easy thing. But we want the players that play that is, yeah, you're here. And all these people, maybe they're the people you fought before.
Is this the scariest thing that you've written, in your opinion?
Gosh, I don't know. That's such a... I think everything you write should be scary for you to write. I think writers have a responsibility to write what scares them because it is historically the most honest and usually the things people are most hungry to hear and see and relate to. Shame dies in the light, right? Like, we all want to feel seen, and if you're not saying something that feels vulnerable, I don't know, what are you doing? So yeah, I think this is scary. I don't know if it's the scariest. I think everything I work on is super scary. There's a lot of me in this. There's a lot of me in Ellie, in Abby, in Dina, in Lev. Those are my main homies. And some of those things were sort of, writing about trauma can be scary to write. You're putting it on the page, but you think about like 17-year-old me or the 17-year-olds that are out there now, and you're like, look, I want to give you an example of, life can be hard, but you can pick yourself back up and you're not going to be the same person you were before. But you can be somebody cool and interesting, and you can enrich other people's lives, and you can have a beautiful life for yourself, and you can grow. And so, I don't know, writers should always write shit that scares them. That's my thesis.
I'm now playing the game again and looking at different parts and playing with photo mode. It's like, how fucking lucky am I, right? Like, how lucky that I have this job and I get to work with all these talented people, and like, I get to even to do this podcast and talk to you in depth about what we're trying to achieve, and that people care about what we make. It's pretty incredible. And like, as disheartening and as some of these leaks have been, it's right, that negative feeling doesn't come close to the positive of like what it was like to go on this journey to make this game and come out on the other side and make something that we're so incredibly proud of. Nothing can take that away.
Next time on the official The Last of Us podcast.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
Again, I would do it all over again. I love this game so much, and I love this character, and after 8 years of playing this character, I'll go anywhere with her.
For me, like, loving Ellie was not a job. That was like, it was easy.
I'm just a girl, not a threat.
I think they should be terrified of you.
The official The Last of Us podcast is produced by PlayStation and Spoke Media. It's hosted by me, Christian Spicer, and written by Brigham Mosley. Our Sony PlayStation team includes Charlie Yater, Christian Cardona, and Carrie Surtees. Our Naughty Dog team includes Arnie Meyer and Scott Lowe, and our production team is Carson McCain, Kelly Kolf, Trey Jones, Reyes Mendoza, and Alicia Force. This episode was mixed by Evan Arnett, who contributed additional sound design and music. Today's episode included interviews with Neil Druckmann, Hallie Gross, Anthony Newman, Kurt Margano, Almudena Soria, and Alexandria Neonaki. Our executive producers are Aaliyah Tavakolian and Keith Reynolds. Thanks so much for listening.
When we first meet Ellie in Jackson, she's 19. She's going out on patrols. She is a little bit more confident in who she is. She's learned how capable she is. She's learned so much from Joel, and she's absolutely a capable fighter, a hunter. She knows her strengths and her weaknesses and knows how to strategize and use those to her advantage. And she's a big contributor to the community in Jackson. Hey.
Hey.
What's up, Joel?
Just checking in. Folks are, talking about how impressed they are with you and how well you're helping out.
It's good.
Yeah. I want to show you something. Just give me 1 second.
What's this?
Some folks call this thing here a guitar.
Funny.
You want to hear something?
Okay.
Okay. Promise me that you won't laugh.
I won't laugh. I won't.
I'm trusting you.
Welcome back to the official The Last of Us podcast. I'm Christian Spicer. Last episode, we skimmed the surface of The Last of Us Part 2, talking with some of the people who helped bring this incredible game to life. But today, we're taking the full plunge, diving deep into story points and talking about one of the two playable characters, Ellie. So yes, warning, we are moving into full spoiler territory here. So if you haven't finished the game yet, proceed with caution.
It's funny. It's in some ways they both found what they're looking for. It's more true for Joel than it is for Ellie. They found a place to settle down, to find society that values them. Joel has, in the journey of The Last of Us 1, has as cliche as that sound, learned to love again. It's learned to accept that love comes with pain and has brought everything that comes with love into his life. But at a cost where now his relationship with Ellie is a bit strained. Ellie can tell that, something happened in that hospital that is off. And even for no other reason, that so much of her journey, and she experienced so much loss by the end of the first game. And it felt meaningless to her because in her idea, it was it would all be worth it if at the end of it, there could be a cure. There could be something positive that comes out of it. And the only thing that came positive out of it is she got this father figure, right? Everyone that she loves constantly comes in and out of her life, except this one dude that has stuck around no matter what. So she got that. But now what does she do? So she's kind of aimless and she doesn't know what her purpose is and she's trying to find it. But she's got this thing that's kind of nagging away at her. I was like, what happened? What happened? And she's she believes she could bury it. She could suppress it, but it keeps coming back up. And that's what we see in the flashbacks. With each flashback, it comes more and more to the surface. She can't help but go find out herself. It's that trust is not quite there.
At this point, Joel and Ellie's relationship, Ellie knows that Joel lied. And not only that, he's killed the people that could have saved humanity. And that weighs on her. And also at this point, she hasn't met anybody else that's immune, or at least they haven't told her. So she also carries the weight of knowing that her death could have saved people. And knowing something that huge could have been your contribution to the world. I mean, how would you even find your purpose in anything else? Because you're well, if that was my purpose, everything else feels less than.
Making a vaccine would have killed you. So I stopped them.
Oh my God.
But that chance was taken away from her, and it's It's a confusing thing, and it's a confusing emotion because she's also dealing with the fact that Joel wanted to save her because he loves her, and they connected and they became family because of this journey that they were on together. And she knows that, but it's intensely confusing. And I can't even imagine what it would be like to have that responsibility of, well, the world wouldn't be like this anymore if I'd given my life. But I believe, at least how I was playing it throughout this game, is she carries that guilt with her, always. And that kind of guilt can rip you apart. It can make you angry and sad and frustrated and can cause anxiety and depression.
I think to the challenges, the moments that were really hard to pull off, and Joel's death is one of them. Is one that was a hard scene to write, and it was a hard scene to prep for, and it was a hard scene to shoot. And then trying to pace it out properly and trying to make it land was really hard. I remember like the last few weeks of production on the music for it, which is like this beating, almost like a heartbeat that just gets more and more like grimy and intense as the scene goes on. So it's like there's this dread that's building. Whereas like with Sarah's death, it ended up being, I think, sad. You feel for Joel and you feel the tragedy of it. And while this is also tragic, there's Sarah's death is surprising, where Joel's death feels inevitable. But I think even with knowing what's happening, and you tell me what you think, I'm really curious to hear it, but we decided, just the way it was coming together, I was like, oh, this scene is more about dread.
It felt, it was tragic, but it felt, I think, as you mentioned, to me, Joel was living just to die. Like, Joel's life was going to catch up with him. Whether it's when he was a smuggler with Tess, or, even I could see it have been a conflict in Jackson. Like, the character of Joel, at some point, his actions were going to have repercussions. And so witnessing it in that way, it was something where, yeah, I literally knew it was coming. But in those moments, you see, and I think the actors' performances, the realization of, I'm Joel and this is my brother Tommy, or I forget, maybe I'm Tommy and it's my brother Joel. And it's like, oh.
Hey, I'm Tommy. That's Joel. What's your name? Abby, are you okay?
The way Abby reacts. In that moment, you're like, oh shit. It's going down. And then I loved the moment, and I imagine there was some debate on it, but experiencing it from Ellie's perspective, where kind of the ringing in her ears and the shock and the scream, and it's not clear. It's emotion that in which you witness that. And I feel like I was very much in Ellie's shoes in that moment. So even though I knew it was coming, it still landed like a bag of bricks.
Yeah, it's funny, again, you think about iteration and how important iteration is to building something that's good, because like so many early versions, Ellie was not there. Ellie just saw the aftermath, and Tommy had to like tell her everything that happened. And then, again, I don't remember whose idea it was or how it came to be, but it was like someone said, oh, Ellie should be there. It was like, oh, that became, oh, of course, this whole thing is predicated on her feeling the most intense hatred. She's got to see the act. Which I know is cruel, but essential for the story.
It's what sets off the journey. And I think when I first heard that Ellie was going to be there for that, I didn't want that for her. But at the same time, I knew that that's what needed to happen for the story. And we all knew that it was going to be heartbreaking and horrible for Ellie to see that. I think I just personally, for me, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, which I think is exactly why they needed to do it.
Neil jokes about the fact that we debated how this happens. And I was so fearful of how this would be presented. And I remember sitting in Neil's office on the couch next to him, and he starts telling me how how this whole thing goes down with Neil. And I think I told this the first time. I'm sitting there with notes and I'm diligently taking notes. I'm like, okay, fantastic. So, trying to be a dutiful student. And then we get to the moment and we kind of move forward. And I just stopped and I was like, man, I need a second. Because it was literally as if someone just told me that someone very near to me had just died. And I realized that I hadn't grieved. It's almost like finding out someone is terminally ill and you go through that process and you're like, okay, we know this is going to happen and we prepare for it. And you go from like, maybe you won't, maybe this is all a bad dream and maybe you'll get better. And then you're like, no, you're in hospice and you're shooting the scene. And then it's done.
I'd love to talk about that part a little bit more where Tommy and Joel save Abby's life. What would they have needed to do to prevent Abby from killing Joel in that moment? Like, that's her life's mission, is to go kill this human being, who then the only reason she's allowed to accomplish that singular focus is because he saves her. Like,
dude, okay. This is why this game, and I'm not saying the first one or the second one, I'm saying this experience, that's why it's part 1 and part 2. It's not a sequel. This thing is the entirety of the story that we're telling. Moments and conversations and characters echo from part 1 into part 2. And it was even one of the earliest lines that you ever heard from part 1 in the trailer, which was Earl Brown. When you get to Bill's town, and there's this conversation with Bill, and he goes, once upon a time, I had someone that I cared about, and I found that thing is only good for one thing, that's to get you killed. This is what happens when you care. And it's the same thing of why it is calling back to Sarah without him having to reference Sarah. It was like, because you didn't care, because you weren't diligent, because you weren't aware, people will get hurt. And you can't care about people because they will die. And when they die, you will be hurt, so you don't care. So you see Joel saying, that's why he rejects Ellie in the very beginning. He was like, I'm not taking her. She's just cargo. This is how we can rationalize if something goes wrong, it's just cargo. Worst case scenario, the cargo gets lost. Worst case scenario, the cargo dies. And that's how Joel justifies it to himself. There's this constant reminder to Joel of every time I care, every time I show my humanity, it catches up to me. But it's the same question that is asked and posited philosophically at the end of the first game. Why not just sacrifice Ellie for the sake of mankind? This is a philosophical argument that's the cable car argument. The degrees of tragedy and depravity that we will allow ourselves to indulge in is completely dependent upon the context of our own experiences. For Joel, sacrificing her is sacrificing humanity. So, to not care about someone is just as bad as being a murderer. Now he understands. Now he is working. He's trying to do everything he can to make penance for the wrong that he did to Ellie. And that man is making his bed up. He's doing the dishes. He's taking out the garbage. He's doing everything he can. I'll save this person's life if it makes me right with her. I'd rather make a wrong decision, but show that I've grown. And that's why he's like, it's you. You're the one that takes me down. It's just, it was this moment of recognition of like, that's when the other shoe drops. When he starts looking around and realizes, I let my guard down and I don't know my exit and I'm surrounded.
Joe. Y'all act like you heard of us or something.
Because they have.
It's that moment from when the lion is trapped.
Joel, get up. Joel, fucking get up. Please stop. Please don't shoot.
Man, that scene, I think boy, I'm getting emotional. I think I was dreading shooting that scene. And It's the scene in the game that is the most devastating, of course, because we are losing a character that we all deeply care about. But when we started shooting that scene, it was awful. Like I didn't want it to be happening, and I know that was the story, but it was a tough week on the job. And it's hard to describe because I feel like that particular week of filming, I was in some ways on autopilot because I was just kind of trying to protect my emotions in a weird way. But at the same time, as an actor, you have to let all that out. And I didn't know what my reactions were going to be. I mean, obviously the scene called for yelling and being upset and crying, but I didn't realize how much anger was going to be coming out. And, obviously had to be restrained. I was like, you guys better be restraining me because I'm going to fucking get up and I'm going to go try to do something if you don't hold me down. And I think that was incredibly helpful because you can hear the strain. Boy, that was a tough day.
I'm reminded of what Neil told me with this scene with Sarah is just look at her. And I was compelled to look at Ashley. So similarly, in the way that Hannah really shepherded me and pulled me through that scene with Sarah, I would say that if that moment is impactful and means something to anybody, it's entirely because Ashley pulled me through that scene.
Joel's death was by far the hardest one. It was the hardest one to figure out how far do we take it. And I always knew we wanted to find the line and then just go a little past that line because it needs to feel really uncomfortable, cruel to get the kinds of feelings we're after for this experience. This was such a long shoot. It was the longest cinematic shoot for any game we've done. And feeling really nervous about how that scene is going to be. And I especially know the attachment Troy has to Joel and feeling the most nervous about how is he going to feel about this scene, because so much of the scene is making sure Joel dies in this kind of unceremonious way. And he's disrespected by these other characters. And first drafts of the game had a lot more mention of Sarah. We wanted to tie Sarah because obviously Sarah's life and death had so much impact on Joel and who he is. And we had once he got his head bashed in, his last word was Sarah. And we're just thinking his mind is it's not quite operating in the same way. You got neurons firing and he just can't help but think about his daughter. And not only Troy, but a few people on the team felt that was a little on the nose, that it could read we're just trying to really force the parallel between Ellie and Sarah, that he's looking at Ellie and he's saying Sarah. And Troy didn't like that. And I said, you know what? I promise you we'll get a version without it. But I want to try it. And that's the thing that I try to always do is if someone on the set has an idea, I always try to make sure we have enough time to try it. Because I don't know. I can't predict what magic will happen when you try something fresh. So if someone feels strongly about an idea, I'm okay, let's try it. As long as you're willing to try everything I want to do. And to Troy, to his credit, was okay, I'll give you everything that's on the page, but I want a version where I say almost nothing. And I'm okay. And that's the version that's in the game.
I think that is a huge breaking point for her. He held sort of this important place in her life, possibly the most important, and he was taken away from her. Taken away before their relationship was fully able to heal. And those are all of the emotions that Ellie sits with for most of the game. And man, shooting was tough. This game was really tough to shoot. And it was a lot harder working on this game than the first game. And we had to go there. We had to go deep and we had to really dive into that or else the game wouldn't work. but it does take a little bit of an emotional toll. It wasn't, but again, I would do it all over again. I love this game so much and I love this character. And after 8 years of playing this character, I'll go anywhere with her.
I don't know if this takes us to a lighter place or not. When Joel and Ellie it's a flashback and they're in the museum.
Did you know this was here?
Oh, you don't like it. We can head back.
Oh, shut up.
Oh, man.
And it's the birthday and the tape of the rocket launch.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
What is this?
This is a thing that took a mighty effort to find.
And then also Ellie's recognition of that gift and what it meant and what it took. And to see her be able to be a child again, if just for a 3-second countdown. It's such a beautiful moment that if all I saw was that, I'd be like, what is this, a Hallmark movie? But because of the world it lives in, it's such a deeply tragic moment.
So keep in mind, I love even how, and nothing that was written and crafted in this scene from the top down, from Neil and Hallie, everybody at the team is haphazard. It's not like, well, I guess it happens in a museum. I guess they stumble upon this. Everything is so down to literally the pixel is ordained.
Why don't you tell me what you like about it?
I don't know. People in your time, they had it easy.
I guess relatively speaking, sure.
I mean, they didn't need to go to space, but they did it anyway. It's ballsy.
Ballsy. All right, kiddo. Now I get it.
So they build us this set, and because we have to be able to capture those movements, and obviously going into the capsule, you would never be able to do that now, right? So there's this beauty and fortune that this desecrated world now affords us. It's like, you may not look, the velvet rope is this, thing that now bans you from it. It's like, I can go touch a Monet if I want to now. I can do all of the things that I wasn't allowed, that somehow the social constructs that we had and the they were there for a reason, but there's those don't exist. There's no speed limits anymore, man. It's just the world is truly wild again.
So cool.
How's it smell in there?
Like space. And dust.
That allows us to be able to explore the places that we never would have been able to go.
Whoa.
After you.
And that to me was just, it was an absolutely, truly beautiful, beautiful moment. And again, it's a testament to Ashley. That moment was put in there. The reason why it feels so real is because that's a genuine desire of Ashley. I remember we were flying over, we were flying from LA to London for a press event for the first game. And it was during the Perseid meteor shower. And we were going to try to see if we couldn't see it from our windows on a plane. And we just sat there, I think pretty much the whole of the flight, and just talked about this game, about where we were at, what we wanted. And I was like, what did you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And that's when she told me, and I think she had told Neil before, she's like, I want to be an astronaut. Still kind of want to be, maybe I'll become an astronaut. So that moment exists for Ashley in the same way that Neil giving me the opportunity to sing and play guitar in that is a moment for me. He's an incredibly giving director and writer, and I don't think I'll ever be able to pay him back for what he's given me.
Happy birthday, kiddo.
What is this?
This is a thing that took a mighty effort to find. Take it. Close your eyes. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
I do okay.
Are you fucking kidding me?
You're welcome, kiddo. Well, what do you say we keep looking around, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
Hey. Welcome to Earth.
Yeah.
That whole sequence is probably one of my favorite parts of the game. Shooting that scene was really special because Troy and I didn't actually get to shoot together a lot during this game. And when we did, they were tough, emotional scenes where Ellie was frustrated and mad and hurt and angry. And that scene, when they get into the capsule, it didn't have any of that. And it was just a brief respite in connecting together again in this loving space. But there's this element of sadness underneath. Ellie's getting older and clearly at that point has already started to question Joel's actions or is starting to sort of find some of the story doesn't add up. Also, you feel the sadness that Joel is feeling because of the loss of innocence that Ellie is already starting to lose. But I love that moment, and it was that day I just remember both of us were just so happy to be doing that scene, but also we were sad because it's kind of a sad scene. And especially when you're going back, when you see that scene in a flashback, and it's hard. It's hard to watch, but I love it.
The idea with The Last of Us, with the first and the second game, is we wanted to explore these pockets of humanity and how they're surviving, right? There are the hunters, there are the quarantine zones that are very oppressive, there's Bill living out on his own, there's the WLF, that's this very militaristic force that thinks they're going to change the world one bit at a time, and yet they can't finish taking over the city. There's the Seraphites that think they're following their prophet's order, God's order, to like restore some balance to the world. And then there's a place like Jackson, which is like doing their best to create some semblance of the humanity we had, the society we had before the outbreak. So that, right, they have rules, they trade. Maybe it's a bit more of like a socialistic system than a capitalist one. They don't really have a currency. But they all they take care of each other. They watch movies. They have festivals where they dance. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I'm going to go on a tangent. Like, one of the things we cut pretty late that was pretty cool is that whole dance sequence. There used to be a playable part right before it. So Ellie's been kind of drinking on her own in like some alleyway. You can hear the festival happening in the distance, and it was playable. So you're walking in the snow, and you walk outside the church, and there's this whole fair, and they have like little games and kids running around. You could like play darts and do all these mini games, and like kids pretending to be a clicker, and they tie like a blindfold on themselves, and they chase each other, and you could play with them. You could go to like the back of the church and find these like two teenagers making out. It was all pretty done. Like a lot of it wasn't super polished. It was like 80%. And we just felt, for pacing purposes, it just slowed things down too much at that point of the story. And it was heartbreaking to cut all that out. But that's one of those like tough decisions you have to make sometimes. Anyways, I went on a tangent, but it kind of talks about the place that Jackson is. Like, you could have a fair where people play. Like, you could have kids playing snowball in the morning, and you could go and like play with them. But it's walled off, and everybody knows beyond those walls is intense danger. So there are people that have to go on patrols and protect this way of life. And Joel and Ellie become, because of their skills and the journey they've been on, and the skills they've accrued, and how, I don't know if brave is the right word. Maybe with Ellie it's more reckless, but they are very valuable members of this society, of this town. So for the story, it was important to take some time to establish, okay, here's what's at stake. Here's what they stand to lose. Here's what Ellie stands to lose, most importantly, by going on this journey. That's why we wanted to like kind of slow things down in the beginning and really set up where Jackson is, what are relationships. And then later in the story also show that there are people here that get into fights, that get drunk, that whatever bigoted ways they had before the outbreak, they're still carrying post-outbreak. It doesn't mean they're necessarily bad people, but it's like they're not perfect people. They're flawed people, just like everybody else in the world.
One of the moments that also, again, broke me was the showing of the dance.
Oh, yeah. I love the dance.
Okay, I have a very serious question for you. How bad do I smell?
Like a hot pile of garbage.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
How about that?
gross. You love it. Every guy in this room is staring at you right now. Maybe they're staring at you. Or not. Maybe they're jealous of you. I'm just a girl, not a threat. Oh, Ellie. I think they should be terrified of you.
When we finally see the dance kind of play out, and the moments of Dina and Ellie together, and Ellie saying, "I'm just a girl."
Mm-hmm. I hate to give Neil credit for anything. It really hurts my soul, but he did write that line, and I pushed back against it. And I don't want to say I was wrong, but I really do love the moment now. And yeah, you know, she's got this best friend who she believes is straight, and she's dancing with her, and she's insecure, like, is Dina flirting with me, or is this just Dina? And nobody, not even Jesse, is like giving it a second thought, because this is just her scrappy best friend dancing with her and being nervous and sheepish. And meanwhile, you've got Ellie, who has Dina wrapped around her, and she's like afraid she's going to give herself away, you know? And like, we have such incredible animators who like focused on pupil dilation and blushing and like sweat, and like, how do you show all of those revealing moments that Ellie can't control? You know, this is Ellie at her most, arguably one of her most out of control moments, right? She is vulnerable in the same way, you know, she's, I would say, arguably out of control when she's leaving the farm, or out of control when she has to fight Abby. But it is these lizard brain moments that allow her to be this holistic character, and it gives her insecurity. And it shows us how much she values Dina.
My name is Shannon Woodward, and I play Dina. Well, first of all, the game means a lot to me. Like, I'm one of the massive fan base. Like, I was obsessed with the first game. I can't even count how many times I've played it. And, you know, I ended up in the game because I had been working with Hallie Gross on Westworld. She wrote on the first season, and we became friends, and we were at a party one night. And I asked her what she was doing over our summer break, and she was like, "Oh, I'm actually, freelancing at this video game company." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, what video game company?" Because I play a lot of games. And she was like, "A Naughty Dog," and I was like, What are you guys writing? The Last of Us 2? And the game wasn't announced yet. And she just went white. And she was like, "I'm not allowed to talk about it." I was like, "Oh, sorry. Wow, that's amazing that they're making that. I won't tell anyone." I was like, "But I'm such a big fan. We tell Neil, like, I would die to have a line in the game." And there was like a relay back and forth for like 6 months of like, "Oh, he really likes the show." And I was like, "Well, I really like everything he does." Until eventually, I think it must have been, maybe even almost a year after that, 9 months, she was like, "There is a role, but you'd have to audition." And I was like, what? There's a role? And I read, and they hired me. But I never needed to do any kind of preparation or anything to do this. Like, I lived in that game with everyone else, Like, I think that's what's so incredible about this game in particular, and what really moved me about the first game is that it feels like it elevates the concept of a novel with a fourth dimension, right? Which is that you feel like you are personally making these decisions. Like, you're personally taking Ellie across the country. Everyone loves Ellie. They took her across the country. We all did. We all saved Ellie's life in that first game. And so for me, like, loving Ellie was not a job. That was like, it was easy.
It's scary. It's scary to sort of be the person that the story is based around, and especially with a game that is loved as much as this game. I wanted to do right by it. But at the end of the day, I wasn't alone, because also was surrounded by other incredible actors that I got to work with, Shannon being one of them, which most of my scenes I got to shoot with Shannon. And she's one of my favorite actors I've ever worked with. And for me, my favorite actors to work opposite of are actors that are prepared and then will let all of that go and live in the moment. Shannon does that in spades. Like, you just don't know what she's going to do. And it's so exciting. And so many of the scenes felt just electric because of that. It was just like a live wire, because we had these scenes and these beautiful words so wonderfully written by Neil and Hallie, and Neil just let us free. And Shannon and I trusted each other implicitly, and we each just sat there and, would take our hands, and each time we shot, we just sort of had this unspoken bond of, "I'll follow you. Let's fucking go."
I'm curious, for you coming in and writing these two characters, what you wanted to convey, and we can talk about all of the relationships, not just Dina and Ellie as like a queer couple, but also Mel and Owen and Abby. But what it's like writing these characters and writing love that feels authentic, but again, in a time of, they're not going to college and then grad school and then getting married, and kind of what going steady maybe does or does not look like, and kind of how you write an honest relationship in a world that hopefully we never know.
Well, love is hopefully one of those things that can feel more universal, right? That most people can relate to or see some part of themselves in another character that is in love. Like the chemical release, the fixation, the nervousness, the insecurity. We've all been there. And that was a real opportunity to get people on board with Ellie, with Dina, ultimately also with Abby, Owen, Mel. But so when writing Ellie and Dina, what we were really focused on is like, if Ellie and Dina are best friends, and Ellie is ostensibly out to everybody but Joel, though that's only a reveal at the end. In the opening, she is actually out to Joel. But if that's not her issue, it's just about like, I don't want to ruin my friendship. I remember like Neil and I went through pages and pages and pages of in-game dialogue, and then we actually filmed and then reshot the hookup scene in the grow house. And that had like way more dialogue. I think I wrote a page-long monologue, like a full, fucking Moby Dick-sized monologue about where Ellie is just freaking out about ruining her friendship with Dina and why she's been bottling up these feelings for so long, and how Dina as a friend means so much to her and she didn't want to ruin that. And I think, gosh, that's just, who doesn't have a friend who's been in that situation? Who can't see that? So like, okay, if you're a straight dude somewhere else, like, yeah, but you know what that feels like for Ellie. Okay, yeah, she's a woman, she's a lesbian, but gosh, you're rooting for her. She's so nervous. And you've also got this tough motherfucking character, right? She can kill anything. She's, she can do anything she wants. And Dina makes her nervous. Dina makes her scared. Dina is the reason that she's like losing her words and her hands are sweating. And like, she'd go up against any shambler compared to this fucking flirtatious girl. And that also gave us a chance to like make her feel really multifaceted, to make her feel not impervious, and to give stakes. It's like, this is the thing she's fighting for. She's fighting through herself to get to Dina in the same way she will fight through herself to let Abby go.
Can I ask you a question?
I don't know, can you?
Scale of 1 to 10. 1 being like absolute trash. And 10 being life-altering. How would you rate our kiss from last night?
Why are we still talking about this?
I asked you to rate our kiss.
I don't know.
I give it a 6.
A 6?
Wow. Like a solid 6.
Okay.
There are a lot of people around.
Yeah, but 6.
Oh, what? Now I really want to know how you'd rate it.
I don't think you do.
You're infuriating.
Have you met you?
You make me want to go back outside into that blizzard.
No one is stopping you.
This better be better than a 6.
I love it. It's another one of my favorite moments in the game because it's just so simple and pure and beautiful, of these two teenagers, this fresh love for each other, and just, I love it. I love that scene so much, and I feel like we finally landed on the right version of it. And personally, I think a lot of the versions that we had were great, but that one in particular felt the most real and honest for the game. Like the representation in this game of a queer relationship is so real and so beautiful, and the kindness and how much they love each other, and it's beautiful and it's sexy. And I am so excited that I got to take part in that. To represent a queer relationship in that way, it's that they have a family life. They're raising this adorable child together. It is a wonderful and beautiful relationship across the board.
Hey, where you been?
hunting took a little longer than I thought. Who's here?
Just come inside.
Ow. Ow. Well, that's quite a grip you got there.
Hey, Tommy.
There you are.
Here, let me take him. Come here, bud. Oh, yeah.
Go.
Here.
Oh, I got it.
Hey.
Hey.
It's good to see you.
You too. He's getting heavy.
No, he's just a big ball of muscle.
I'm curious what you think Ellie and Tommy's relationship is or will be. And maybe even what it was in the game in that moment. One of my favorite moments in the game is when he taps his finger. It's kind of like the...
Town's good? Maria good?
Oh, she's fine. We're taking some time apart.
And there's just like a subtle, like, on the table, and there's so much said with so little. Like, he knows what he's doing, right? I'm projecting. I want to get your take. I'll quit poisoning the well.
Yeah.
I want to get your take on their relationship.
Yeah, when Tommy finally comes to Ellie after, it's been past a year. Yeah, Tommy's healed. It's been some time.
So I've been putting out feelers for months now. And this new guy heard my story. He told me about a woman that he traded with while he was moving through California. Described her as built like an ox, traveling with a kid with scars across his face. That's gotta be her.
I feel like that scene just shows how much Tommy is hurting. I think yes, of course, it's terrible that Tommy is coming to her and putting this on her to do, and also putting the onus on her of saying, like, well, I can't do it. I can't go out there and go do this thing, and you're the only one left who can go get this revenge. And that scene is heartbreaking to me because it shows how broken he is, where even he thinks that what's going to solve this pain and this hurt that they're all experiencing is by killing the person who did it.
Reckon it's easy. Forget about her. You sitting all comfy way out here?
Hey.
I'll make her pay.
Tommy.
That's what you said when we got back to Jackson.
Tommy.
Yeah, it's shitty, but I get it. That is a person who is going through so much pain and doesn't know what to do with it. It feels to me, especially in that scene where Tommy comes to Ellie for the first time and you see him after all that, he's in a bad place. He's in a really bad place. And so is Ellie. You see her at the house finally after, going on the journey with Abby, and then you come back to the house and see this beautiful home life that she has with Dina. And then she has a panic attack in the barn, and you realize, oh, she's really not okay. She's not doing well. This game absolutely just shows you how hate can absolutely wreak havoc on a family and an entire community of people.
In the first act, we have all the love story stuff with Ellie and Dina, and the way that they just are in love and they're being sweet with each other, and they're very quickly taken out of that reverie once everything happens with Abby and Joel, and then she's immediately caring for her girlfriend who is deeply grieving. And I think Dina suspects that she might be pregnant, but I think it's just not the priority to her at that point in time. They're on a mission. And I think that is very much what Ellie and Dina share, which is, they patrol all the time. They're on a mission. They have a job to do. And she's incredibly dedicated and loyal and strong and patient. Then as the story moves on and she realizes that she is pregnant and that she is a liability, like, it's not her first choice and there's kind of nothing she can do about it. And that's really hard for her to let her go, and especially to basically see Ellie come back in these moments of like progressively things just getting darker and darker. And then there's some relief, and they go home and they create a life together. They have a family, and I think they're really happy then. And there's a sneaking suspicion for a long time, I think, that Ellie is not well. And she's watching someone, I think, to some extent, just get sicker. And that's terrifying.
I have to finish it.
You don't owe Tommy anything.
I don't sleep. I don't eat. I'm not like you, Dina.
And I saw that scene as a death almost. And it goes through the bargaining stages of it, but then also just realizing that she has to accept that if this person is going to give in to this, sickness, that there's nothing she can do about that, but that she has to protect herself and protect their child, and also attempting to protect Ellie by setting real boundaries, which is that, if you leave, I won't be here when you get back.
You think this is easy? For you and for him, I deal with it.
I love you.
Prove it. Stay.
I can't.
So what? I'm just supposed to sit here and wait for you? For God knows how long, just thinking you're fucking dead the entire time?
I don't plan on dying.
Yeah, well, neither did Jesse. Or Joel. Hey, stop. Hey, come on. We've got a family. She doesn't get to be more important than that.
And I think, everybody can kind of relate to seeing someone they love change in a way that feels like they're slipping away. But for it to happen with such stakes, for Dina's, it's a tragic scene, but an important scene. It's the only time, really, that anyone really tries to beg for Ellie's sanity.
I'm not gonna do this again.
That's up to you.
I want to spend the rest of my life talking with you about that porch scene.
Man, when we were shooting that, I want to say that was damn near the only scene we did that day, that I did that day. And it was hefty. And it immediately was, I think we were thinking about that scene more than anything else. And the temptation is to think about the death scene, and that's what's going to eat up most of your bandwidth. And instead it was like, we both wanted the reconciliation to be there. We both needed to forgive ourselves in that moment not for past transgressions of the first game, but what we both knew that we had to do. We both had to be in some way complicit in Joel's death. And for me, that was that moment of, if we can get here and if we can have this will sanctify that moment. This will baptize and make holy that moment. Make it worth it.
Hey.
What are you drinking?
Coffee.
Where'd you get that?
Those people that came through last week.
Oh.
I'm a little embarrassed as to what I had to trade to get it, but it's not bad.
I had Seth under control.
Yeah, I know.
And you need to stop harassing Jesse about my patrols.
Okay.
And And I think that scene on the porch is all subtext. The beauty of it is the tragedy. The beauty of it is that they came this close to truly being able to forgive and for Joel to truly ask for forgiveness. And that's as close as they'll ever get. And to me, that becomes that retroactively. Now I understand why. It's not that Joel died and that's what sparked all of this. It's that they never had that closure. It's that they never had that forgiveness. And you'll never have that. And that's what revenge and someone who is killed out of revenge, that's what robs you of, is all of the moments that could have been. And I understand all of the choices that Ellie makes. I understand all the choices that Abby makes. I don't agree with them, but I understand them.
Have you buried Joel?
I think I'm reserving that moment for when it's time to do that. And I don't think it would be an injustice to the game and the team and my experience if I relegated that and did that before I had experienced the way that it was meant to be experienced. That moment is meant and was carefully curated and crafted over years by hundreds of people, lovingly, painfully, skillfully. And for me to go, yeah, I've already done it. It's like, well, how you buried someone who's not dead yet? So I have been reserving that moment until I play it.
Dina, is she your girlfriend?
No. No, that was just one kiss. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know why she did that.
But you do like her.
So stupid.
Look, I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
Next time on the official The Last of Us podcast.
If people don't like Abby, if people don't get Abby, this game fails. It won't work for them.
If it was me, I'd want you to do the surgery.
I don't think you can feel at peace ever
once you've dealt with that kind of a tragedy.
What happens when you don't put the knife down? It's just this continued escalation toward destruction, and everybody loses, right? And you can't even remember why you did it, but the ego is so driving these characters, the sense of what they're entitled to and how they've been wronged.
They fight and bicker and have judgments of each other, you know, like just all these prejudices from a lifetime of hatred. And then they overcome that and become friends.
Those are your fucking people. You're my people.
The official The Last of Us podcast is produced by PlayStation and Spoke Media, and it's hosted by me, Christian Spicer, and written by Brigham Mosley. Our Sony PlayStation team includes Charlie Yater, Christian Cardona, and Carrie Surtees. Our Naughty Dog team includes Arnie Meyer and Scott Lowe. Our production team is Carson McCain, Kelly Kolf, Trey Jones, Reyes Mendoza, and Alicia Force. This episode was mixed by Evan Arnett, who contributed additional sound design and music. Today's episode included interviews with Neil Druckmann, Hallie Gross, Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, and Shannon Woodward. Our executive producers are Aaliyah Tabakolian and Keith Reynolds. Thanks for listening.
The high-level concept was always like, can we get you to feel hate and maybe even betrayed by this character? And then can we bring you back from that? That's the challenge. You know, with the first game, the mantra was always like, if you don't love Ellie, like she's part of your family, this game fails. That was a challenge. And with this game, the mantra has always been, if people don't like Abby, if people don't get Abby, this game fails. It won't work for them.
Dad?
It's her. Let's go.
That doesn't sound good.
No, she's in pain. Oh, shit. Abs.
What?
We've got to cut her loose. It's okay, calm down. Don't worry. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm gonna hold her.
Okay.
Calm down.
Doc, are you around here?
Over here, Owen.
Dad!
Holy fuck. We did good back there. Doc, that girl showed up. What girl? The one Marlene keeps talking about. They found her in the tunnels. She has an old bite mark on her arm. No signs of infection. That can't be.
Welcome back to the official The Last of Us podcast. I'm Christian Spicer. Last episode, we covered Ellie's 3 days in Seattle and her hunt for members of the WLF. Today, we're discussing the game's other protagonist. If you don't want to know anything about this other protagonist, if you've been avoiding all spoilers, stop now. Otherwise, come with us as we discuss Abby, performed beautifully by the incredible Laura Bailey. So yeah, there are going to be spoilers, so if you haven't finished the game yet, listen at your own risk.
The earliest pitch for the game actually was you played with Abby for a long time, and in fact, she joined Jackson. That's earliest iteration of the game. It was going to be open world, and there would have been several hubs. So the first one is you play as a character that joins Jackson, Abby, and you don't know who she is or what her past is, and she is taken under Joel's wing. And you can tell these two characters have an affinity for one another, where Joel and Ellie had a falling out. And then you would keep playing and playing for hours until you reach this climactic moment where all of a sudden the character you've been playing betrays Joel and kills him in this horrible way. And the idea was again, to play with the empathy you felt for the character, and you think you understand this character and then reveal, no, you don't. This character has had an ulterior motive this whole time. The reason we didn't do that, or one of the main reasons, is that Joel dying is the inciting incident. In a story, you're trying to get to the inciting incident as fast as you can because that sets up the whole story. So it just felt like that would have really slowed things down, and you'd be like, what is happening? Where is this going? And it fought a little bit against, this might sound weird, it made it too easy for us. If we build too much empathy for Abby in the beginning, then we're not going on the journey, the vision of what this game is, what we set out to do, which is make you feel this intense hatred where like we want people to say, I want to torture Abby. I want this eye for an eye. As far as we can get them. That's why that Joel death is intense as it is. We want to get you all the way there and then see how much we can bring you back.
Oh, hi. I'm Laura Bailey, and I play Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. I had done some like small parts in part 1, and then I did a little bit more. I ended up doing a bit more voice work for Left Behind, the DLC, and I worked with Neil on that. And he doesn't remember this conversation. I've had this talk with him before. He doesn't remember that he told me this. But at the wrap party for Left Behind, he sat me down at a table and he was like, so, are you ready to come on board for part 2? And I was like, oh my God, yes. Are you kidding me? This game is everything. And he's like, I have this role that I think you'd be great at. Her name's Abby. And didn't tell me much more about it. And then I didn't hear anything until the auditions came up. And I went in and I auditioned for Abby, even though he had told me that he thought I would be good for it. And I was nervous I was so nervous because, it's with Ashley and it's with Troy. And, it was killing me.
So let's zoom all the way back to you as a human being. Right?
Oh, hi. I'm Laura Bailey.
And we don't know tragedy at all as real people, so this will be fun. No, but you as Laura, knowing this character and keeping this secret, and also, oh God, what was it, 2016, 2017? The E3 trailer that was like all you, but mum was the word about who you were, what you were, what it meant. And I imagine everyone had to be asking all of those things. I'm sure I was one of those people. It's just like, what the heck? Who is this? What is happening?
Who's this buff chick?
And I'm curious what that was like to be a part of this thing that you were a fan of and a big part of, and to now be carrying this secret for 4 years. What was that experience like, and how did you kind of process it?
It's so
this
hard.
is our moment of levity.
Yeah, right? No, I mean, if anything, it's just torturous for my ego. Just because you work so hard on something for so long and you just want to be able to share it. You just want to be able to, get it out there, and you can't. Although it has been really fun to see online, like everybody thinking they know who Abby is, thinking.
Dude.
So many people thought she was Ellie's mom. Like everybody thought she was Ellie's mom. Yeah, so that was fun to see everybody get it wrong. I would never want to play a role that just, is everything that you'd expect it to be. Yeah, you always want to bring something more to it. And I feel like if at the end of the game, if you're not left conflicted, then I didn't do my job.
Mel's wrong, You're a good person.
You don't know me.
I know enough.
It's an incredible writing challenge to get to say, hey, we're going to take this character and we're going to completely fuck ourselves in terms of empathy and viewer sympathy, and then climb our way back toward it. Like, that's exciting. And then to do it in ways that feel morally gray, right? Like, Abby, she's deeply flawed. She didn't get closure from killing Joel. She's on the outs with most of her pals. There have been huge consequences, right, to this hunt, to this murder, to this lack of closure. And we wanted to honor that, right, that all of this violence has consequences. So then we were doubly stacking ourselves because you already don't like this character. And we want to be honest about the fact that, like, yeah, most of her friends aren't huge fans of her either right now. And she's a little bit stubborn and doesn't really want to atone or kind of, she just wants to go back to daily life.
Joel Miller.
Who are you?
Guess.
Why don't you say whatever speech you got rehearsed and get this over with?
Do you think there's anything that Joel and Tommy could have done that would have stopped Abby in that moment from killing Joel?
No.
Do you think the fact that Joel and Tommy saved her life kind of wrecked Abby in a way that she otherwise maybe wouldn't have been if her plan, air quote, went according to plan? And let's say they infiltrated the base, as she describes to Owen, or they capture somebody, they find out where Joel is, she sneaks in the middle of the night and kills him. Does Abby have a happy ending then, if it wasn't for the way she encountered Joel, or was Abby's path always tragic in some regards?
I think even if things had gone off without hitch and, she hadn't had a positive interaction with Joel or Tommy ever, I think she still would have come to the realization that she wasn't fulfilled afterwards. I don't think you can feel at peace ever once you've dealt with that kind of a tragedy.
It's intertwined with the brain. There's no other option.
There has to be some other way.
There's no way to remove the specimen without destroying the host.
The host? She's a child, not some petri dish.
You think I don't... I'm aware of the situation.
And you're okay with killing her?
No, I'm okay with developing a vaccine that'll help save millions of lives. Look, everything that we've been fighting for, all the sacrifices, all of the horrific... all of that is justified with this one act.
I loved seeing Marlene again. And I feel like it was so wonderful, both the performances of the characters in game, and I imagine on set as well, but seeing Marlene become this multidimensional character in a way that maybe she wasn't in part one, and seeing her struggle and that moment of what to do. Because I feel like that made a gray game even grayer, and seeing Marlene struggle with it. I'm curious if you could talk about kind of the importance of going back to that hospital and going back to that moment so many times and seeing it play out, and not just talking around it, but letting us see it as well.
Again, talking about story iteration, initially, Abby was a survivor from this caravan of people that were traveling across the country. That was the original opening for this pitch. And this caravan comes under attack, and everyone is murdered by these two marauders. And then you're playing this little girl, and she goes and she hides in the snow, and she watches like her family getting killed. And then you see it's Joel and Tommy. And that felt interesting, right? Joel and Tommy had this past, and here we could show it off. But again, speaking the theme of like the cycle of violence, once the idea came to be, it was like, what if it was someone related to the doctor of the first game? The doctor that everyone that finished the first game had to kill. Everyone who's finished the first game is complicit in that act. I know the game forces you to do it to finish it, but you still went ahead and did it.
I didn't know it forced me.
Well, some people just go in guns blazing.
I was hot. I was coming in hot.
So then to say, okay, we're going to take this character that was, I don't think we gave him a name in the first game, and flesh him out. And to say, okay, for this doctor that was going to operate on this girl, doctors take this vow of like being ethical, and here's someone that's going to break that to try to save millions of people in their mind. Well, how do we flesh them out? Again, we're trying to show the other side of the conflict. So how do we show, well, first of all, let's show his relationship with Abby. Let's show that, he cares for like this animal that he's been tracking. He doesn't follow the rules. All of a sudden he becomes more fleshed out, interesting character. And then there was a little bit of, again, I forget the exact wording. There's a recording from Marlene in the first game where she says,
I just finished speaking, more like yelling at our head surgeon. Apparently there's no way to extricate the parasite without eliminating the host. Fancy way of saying we gotta kill the fucking kid.
And she felt like they were just, out of respect, they brought it up to her. But it was like a non-choice. And I was like, I kept thinking about that conversation. What would that conversation be like? So then it felt, well, we're going back there. Let's see that conversation. Let's now's our chance to get into it and show Marlene and just show that everybody struggled with this choice. It wasn't like the doctor was like, well, fuck this 14-year-old girl. I don't care. Let's just kill her. It's like, no, he really struggled with it. And Marlene presents him with the question, the hardest question, like,
if this was your daughter,
what if it was Abby?
What would you do?
And he doesn't answer it. And Abby kind of saves him from like having to answer it by walking in. But you see, like, even to the end when Abby says, like, I would want you to do it if it were me. He doesn't say yes or no. So,
Abby.
I'll buy you some dinner.
Thank you, sweetheart. Look, Marlene. Do it. Thank you. I'm gonna go tell Joel. Why? He traveled across the country with her. He has a right to know. Good luck with your surgery.
You're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
If it was me, I'd want you to do the surgery.
And to me, it just hit too, like a thing that I knew happened, but seeing Marlene say she's going to go tell Joel. And it's just like, you talk about, knowing the story. And that's a moment where, if you've played the first game, you know the story.
Mm-hmm.
But still seeing it, it's just such a moment of just, I don't know if it's sympathy or empathy exactly, but just this longing of like, yeah, that's the right thing to do. But damn, if only you knew what was
if only
going
you
to
were like
happen.
colder, right? If only you were more sinister, you would just go put a bullet in the back of his head and you'd be done. But it's kind of like that idea of like no good deed goes unpunished in this world.
I'd love to get your take on what each faction type maybe represents in the world or the themes of the game.
Well, I think both are trying to do a similar thing just from different camps, right? So the Seraphites or the Scars are talking about religious extremism and how the backstory with the Seraphites is that they had a prophet, a woman, who saved a bunch of people during the outbreak and had these sort of very beautiful teachings, and the group underneath her became more extreme, more radical, more violent, and kind of, Lev would say, took her teachings in a direction that she had not originally intended, right? So they, by the time Ellie arrives in Seattle, they are very well entrenched in this world. They believe that Seattle has been ordained to them, and they represent this theme that we've got going on about the cycle of violence and this escalation, right? So as you get to learn their conflict with the WLF, who's responsible, whose fault is whose, is completely lost to history. And it's just, well, you wronged me, well, you're encroaching on me, well, you're encroaching on me. And the WLF, the Wolves as well, represent the same side, but on a more like civil military angle, where, originally they were civilians and ex-Fireflies going up against a corrupt government that was taking care of Seattle, and then in their own way became much more aggressive, ultimately not being able to make peace with the Scars. And so really with this, we want to have this macro version of what happens when you don't stop. What happens when you don't put the knife down. It's just this continued escalation toward destruction, and everybody loses, right? And you can't even remember why you did it, but the ego is so driving these characters, the sense of what they're entitled to and how they've been wronged. And there's really no way out of it.
At what point do you think that in the story, and I might not quite have the right word here, but at what point do you think you earn players liking Abby?
If we're talking structurally, her inciting incident is really hooking up with the kids. And then her end of Act 1 sort of heeding the call is collecting the kids and including them and bringing them to the aquarium for safety. So in my mind, that is her first truly selfless act in the game. And thus, the first time maybe a lot of players will feel like she deserves consideration. You know, these kids would be dead without her. So there's a little bit of a life for a life there.
I feel like it leads to such a beautifully tragic moment with Abby. She goes through so much to save Yara. Like, it's such a big part of her 3 days is that visit to the hospital and potentially Ground Zero, or at least Seattle Ground Zero.
Yeah. Going to the hospital was something we had really early on and has stayed pretty consistent throughout. It was very much like, we need time for you to fall in love with this kid, because this kid is responsible for so many of these actions, inadvertently largely, but sometimes intentionally. You want to understand why he's doing it. You want to care for him. Like, again, so much of this game is making judgments based on just bullet points about a person and then coming to understand the larger picture. It's like, okay, this kid ran away from his extreme religious background but because he shaved his head and dragged his sister on this destructive path with him. Let's get an understanding of how much love and hope and naivete is surrounding him.
I'm Ian Alexander, and I play Lev in The Last of Us Part 2. You know, this has been a game that I've been working on since I was like 16 years old. So I'm 19 now. It's been 3 years. I've grown a lot. I know my voice has changed a lot since what you probably heard in the game. And I've just been like so grateful to have the opportunity to grow and to like have such a raw, vulnerable, sensitive, but strong character to play. It's just been such a learning experience and such an amazing, life-changing experience.
I'm curious what it was like to play that kind of balancing, maybe how a real world young teenager would feel in our world versus Lev growing up in the environment where he has had to do the things he needs to do to survive.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, Lev has to grow up super, super fast because of all the trauma that he's dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I mean, it's the same with like kids growing up nowadays in like war-torn countries. Like you don't have time to like be a kid when you're running from, you know, soldiers and trying to protect your own life. So there is like a lot of hardened warrior-like tendencies to Lev. Like you said, badass. Like he's like bloodthirsty, you know, sometimes, but also he's still a kid. So there is that like sensitive, innocent, naive side. I mean, he asks Abby a lot of questions because he's like very curious kid and doesn't know a whole lot about the world because he was raised pretty sheltered, aside from the fact that, you know, he knows how to kill people.
There are thousands of us. Do you know every scar?
Stop calling us scars.
Sure. Scars built all this?
Seraphites.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. It's pretty cool.
What's cool?
Like, impressive. Awesome. Fuck these scars. Seraphites, whatever.
Yeah, fuck them.
Never heard a Seraphite cuss before.
That's my first time.
But I think that growing up in that kind of environment, I mean, Lev becomes super adaptable, super agile. You know, he knows how to take care of himself, how to survive. And I really admire that. I admire that so much in Lev. And I think when I was 13, I was just kind of like clueless, you know, bumbling around. I don't think I can compare like my 13-year-old self to Lev in any sort of way. Like, I think I see more of myself now in Lev than I do like my teenage self, just because of like how mature and like grown up he is.
I'd love to get your take on kind of what that relationship between Lev and Abby is like, and kind of how that evolved over the course of the game.
Yeah, I think very much in the sense that Lev and Abby balance each other out. It's kind of reminiscent of Ellie and Joel's relationship, of this like hardened grizzly warrior character, and then like a more innocent but still hardy, still badass younger character coming in and kind of changing their perspective on life and like helping them be more hopeful and optimistic. And then on the other side, it's like the older character helps the younger character grow up and like protect themselves better and see the world in different perspectives. And I really love that growth, that character arc for both Lev and Abby, where they overcome their prejudices against each other because, their whole lives they've been taught that the other person is the enemy, the wolf soldiers are the enemy. So they fight and bicker and have judgments of each other, like just all these prejudices from a lifetime of hatred. And then they overcome that and become friends. And it's just the most beautiful thing of like people from two completely different walks of life who have completely different experiences can still have similarities enough to fight together and to have each other's backs.
We did it. We killed that big demon.
Yeah, we did. Come on.
I'd love it if you could talk about Lev's relationship to his faith and maybe what those struggles were and how he came to make the decisions he made.
Yeah. So the Seraphites are very restrictive in like the binary, the women have to look a specific way, the men have to look a specific way. Everyone is expected to wear, traditional dress. They have their traditions, their beliefs. And it very much is I wouldn't go as far to say, well, I will go as far to say a religious cult. And that is something that I had experience with growing up in my life in a very conservative, restrictive religion. So I kind of have a similar experience where Lev has to break free of his, restrictive upbringing because of his identity and who he is. He just can't bear to live in a lie anymore. And so even though it puts him at the risk of death and all of his loved ones in a dangerous situation, he just has to be true to himself. And so he, shaves off all of his hair. And it actually is a really, really meaningful moment in the game to me where Abby asks, do you want to talk about it?
Did you hear what they called me?
Yeah.
Do you want to ask me about it?
Do you want me to ask you about it?
No.
Okay.
And then they just, they don't really talk about it. It is something that is so deeply personal to Lev. He's probably coming to terms with, a crisis of faith, which is something that I went through as well, being like, is everything that I was raised to believe wrong? Like, now what does this mean if the people that I loved and cared about the most are now turned against me because of me just trying to be happy and just, trying to be true to myself? So I think Lev does really struggle with that internally. And eventually comes to a place of realizing that he has to, put himself first and his loved ones first. And when he tries to go back for his mother, it doesn't go well.
I just tried talking to her. I tried to make her understand. But she just kept yelling.
And I think that's kind of the breaking point for him of realizing like, oh, I can't save everyone that I want to save. So I have to save myself. I have to save the people that are with me.
I think it was very interesting to have, especially with Lev and Yara, characters who grew up in a belief system and grew up in a cloistered belief system. And, there's a scene in the aquarium when Abby and Yara are looking for Lev, where Abby is showing, or Yara lingers on a map of the west coast of the United States.
Where is Santa Barbara?
It's in California.
Where's California?
Okay, so look, this is Seattle, and this is Santa Barbara.
And Yara says, okay, but where are we?
And our island?
And then Abby points again to Seattle.
So far.
Yeah.
And it's the first time that Yara realizes how big the world is. She has no concept that there's so much out there, that Abby has traveled so far. And there's something very interesting to that insular, isolated life. So whereas the WLF, you may not agree with their position, but, we still have in-game dialogue where characters are vaguely talking about reading Harry Potter and taking their kids to school, and it's very, they seem aware of the past. You know, Lev and Yara have no concept of the old, you know, quote unquote old world. So I think that was a really lovely opportunity. We wanted to not point fingers at any one religion, right? So in talking about religious extremism, we certainly didn't want to single out anybody. So the easiest tack, I think, for us was to create a religion, and to create a religion that felt very much of this world, just in terms of how religion can evolve and change as generations move through it, and how the original intentions of somebody, you know, if like everybody grows and changes and sometimes it becomes corrupted.
Trying to explore the state of the world, we became intrigued with this idea of like, okay, what does ground zero look like? You know, when Abby heads to that hospital basement and it's like some of the earliest infected.
What the fuck did this?
And we had a desire, I came with this idea of a rat king. I don't know if you're familiar with this concept of rat kings, but like those rats and sewers can get all tangled together and then they move as one unit. I was like, okay, well, how many infected can we fuse together that have been stuck there for who knows how many years, and have this big kind of monster come after you? It was like a sort of homage to horror movies and horror games like Resident Evil. I was like, okay, that's our Resident Evil moment. It's going to be this crazy boss fight. But thematically, right, it's a constant reminder of the state of the world. It's a constant reminder there's this pressure on these characters at every moment. Every moment death is around the corner. And how do you operate? How do you find a normal life when that's always there? And it was important for you to feel that tension every few steps of the way.
Why then? Why was it important, or why did it feel important to have that moment of this closed off, singular fight between Abby and this creature, in terms of what that says about the experience and what you're going on as a player?
Yeah, as and kind of classical narrative structure is there's a character that wants something, and they're going to take the path of least resistance to get it. And you want to keep putting bigger and bigger obstacles in their way to show their will, to show how badly they want it and how much they're willing to like go outside their comfort zone to get it. So if you think about like Abby at that point had decided that she needs to save these kids no matter what. Like this is her redemption. She has made this choice. And now like Yara is on the table dying because her arm is broken, and maybe Abby feels guilty that she didn't bring her here for help sooner. And the clock is ticking to save this girl. And at first it's like, okay, it's going to be that there's flooded streets and you got to get past that. And you got to do some dangerous jumps.
Oh, fuck.
Then we're going to throw some infected your way, and you're going to fight them. Okay, now we're trying to get into height, and Abby's fear of height, and she has to overcome that.
Just try not to look down.
Now she has to, like, start lying and betraying her own group to try to get the medicine.
I need to grab some medical supplies. I'm doing a thing for Isaac.
We're moving all these assets to Isaac. What does he need?
I can't talk about it. It's something away from the fob.
Take a look, see if anyone's got what you need.
And then she's in this basement where, like, essentially a giant demon is coming after her, and she's going to keep going. And that when we're just showing her will and what she's willing to put on the line to save these kids. And then things are going to get worse and worse for her to try to save them. But that's where we were at that point. And again, looking at pacing-wise, it felt like, okay, it was time for something new, something fresh, something that like tells you a bit more about the world and what happened. So this solution kind of answered all those things. And it was this nice kind of climactic moment of having this big, satisfying fight and coming out with this medicine and like thinking, oh, I'm going to save this girl. Everything's going to be okay.
There is the moment from Mel, who has a history with Abby, a history that we don't see. And this moment is likely out of what she feels is happening between Abby and Owen, and they certainly have a history, some of which we see, some of which we don't. And Mel, with all seriousness and the weight of the world on her shoulders, looks at Abby and says, "You're a piece of shit. You always have been. You always will be." And I felt like that landed to Abby. Was Abby a piece of shit?
Yeah. I mean, she didn't realize it, right? I mean, her whole focus in life was making things right, in quotes, you know? And for years, that's all she focused on. And all of her relationships suffered for it. And I think the reason that hit so hard from Mel is because Abby, at that point, has the self-loathing. She already had the recognition that, oh, God, I am pretty fucking shitty. So to have somebody else call you out on it, especially when you've made the realization and maybe you're trying and nobody else is seeing it yet.
Because Owen also tries to connect with her in the idea that you're allowed to be happy. We're allowed to be happy.
Coming to Santa Barbara, right?
I can't.
Why?
You know why.
We can figure this out.
It's too late.
No, it isn't. Look, I know it's a fucking mess. I know. But we can choose to be happy. Happy. We're allowed to be happy.
And so I'm curious what Abby thought happiness could be in that moment when Owen tries to connect with her, because she has killed Joel. She's recognized that that's not the end-all solution. Revenge won't bring them back kind of lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't she be happy?
Because she doesn't deserve it. You know, that's like, he can say you're allowed to be happy, but after the sins committed, I don't think she thinks she can do that. But, you know, the loss of her dad, which, you know, in all the scenes you get with him, you understand like what a bright spot he was and how positive he was. And, you know, I think her time with the Fireflies really, even though she hadn't experienced life before, she still had them saying, there's hope, right? That's what they meant. There's hope that this won't last forever and there will be a peace coming. And when that's taken away, I think her hope died, you know? And I don't think she fully understands what even that means anymore.
PTSD has sort of a through line in the game. And I feel like Abby and Ellie both suffer from it. Because they both have been through these very traumatic events, and how they act out in the game, I feel like very clearly shows how trauma can tear you apart if it's untreated. And it's a very serious topic of conversation. And, you know, I don't ever want to compare acting to people going through these actually traumatic events in life, because that's not fair. But I still think this was a very important story to tell. And also exploring and researching and seeing how I can sort of properly convey those emotions. And, you know, I am someone who suffers from panic attacks. And I don't have PTSD, but I definitely have had some moments in my life that many people would consider traumatic. Something as a panic attack is no joke. And it's very awful and you feel like you're going to die in that moment. And it's I feel like I've never really talked this out with someone that's not my therapist. So it's a tough conversation, but I feel like it's also a tough conversation because it's not something that people talk about a lot. And there's still this sort of weirdness about talking about mental health. And I feel like there is this viewpoint that we have around mental health that we don't make a space to work on it because it's almost viewed poorly on if you do something. Like, no, you got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you can handle this. And, you know, we take medication for blood pressure. We take medication for headaches and serious problems that we have. But for some reason, dealing with mental health or any of this other stuff, it's taboo to talk about. Even I still don't know how to talk about it. Clearly, I'm struggling through this, but I don't want to have that anymore. And I think if we sort of have these issues talked about in entertainment, in video games, in movies, and sort of make them more present so people can see that it's out there and people deal with these things, maybe it'll be an easier conversation to talk about and we can figure out better ways to deal with them.
I've suffered from PTSD, so I was able to really bring that to Ellie, which was exciting. I think you don't get to see that a lot in the media. You don't get to see a lot of like women struggling with trauma, women being resilient. Right now, we're seeing a lot of women who are just sort of Captain Marvel perfect and impervious to the hardships around them and can take a punch and keep on kicking. But I was always inspired by Ellie that like life is really hard and life continues to knock the shit out of her and she keeps picking herself back up. And you see her even at the end of this game, she picks herself back up and she gets her backpack on a few fingers lighter, and she heads out. And that was what I wanted to see. I wanted to see facets of resiliency in all of the characters. And so I just sort of, I don't know, I drew from life. I gut checked against other people. And also trying to figure out, how did none of these characters feel black and white? How do they all feel morally gray?
We talked to Hallie about PTSD and how it touches on that in a very real way. And I'm curious, as a performer, how you kind of unlock that and then put it back again, kind of dealing with such a brutal world, you know? As characters say in the game, they call Abby a piece of shit. How do you play that character? How do you tap into that? But then also let it go when you need to be a decent human being.
And then some of it sticks with you. But I mean, to that end, I think that's exactly what they have to do in that world. Everybody has to be able to instantly put on and take off the brutal hat because you can't constantly live as a killer, right? You do these heinous things and then you go and you have a drink with your buddies. I think to Abby and anybody really that is, somebody on the front lines in this kind of a situation, they have to be somebody that can turn that switch off in themselves and just move like a machine. So it haunts you just a little bit coming off those kind of days. I certainly, doing scenes like finding my dad or finding Owen, those were all kind of days back to back, and I was fucked for a few days afterwards because you have so much emotion just pouring out of you, and your body doesn't realize that you're acting. You create those emotions in yourself, and then they're just there, and you just kind of have to deal with it until they find a way out again.
Related to finding a way out or finding humanity and PTSD, Abby relives these moments of walking into the hospital, the operating room, and seeing her dad dead there. And we see that moment as it happened, and we see it in Abby's dreams. And then one of those moments is Abby in that hospital, walking through the corridor, and then seeing Yara and Lev, and kind of what happens to them if she does nothing. And I'm curious to get your take on Abby's decision to save them and what that means to her and what it means to her in that moment and why she decides to act versus letting that be a thing that she kind of sheds off because it's just part of life for her.
That's premeditated, right? That's everything else is about survival. To sit back and know that they're just going to suffer, that's something different.
So why this time? Why then did she need to go back for them? And especially for Yara, she puts it all on the line for Yara to ultimately have her die.
Right.
Why does Abby do that?
You know, coming off that dream, coming off the realization of where she was at that point in her life, which is exactly where Lev and Yara are, age-wise, coming off of having just really been a pretty shitty human after everything that just happened with Owen. I think that moment of going, I can't live with myself if I don't go do something, you know, at least try, is a huge turning point for Abby.
Do you think she succeeds?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think she realizes that there is a cost, you know?
Does she have hope? Does Abby have hope?
Yes, there is hope. I mean, what's crazy is what you're seeing Ellie go through is everything Abby went through. There would be a period where she wouldn't see that everything was her fault. She would think like, this is on Joel, this is on Owen for, getting Mel pregnant. This is on Ellie for coming back after we let her live. How dare she? And then finally coming to the reality of, this is on me. This is based on my actions. I'm the one that set this in motion. And finding a peace with that, if there can be. I think Lev certainly helps her see a possibility that she can forgive herself and find redemption in whatever way she can. And that's, one of the reasons it's so important, he's so important to her, is I can find redemption through keeping this kid alive.
She's gone. Oh my God, she's gone. Come on, those were your fucking people. You're my people. Listen to me. We're gonna have to fight to get out of this, okay? And then I need you to show us to those boats. We don't let anybody stop us. Yeah? Okay. Follow me.
Next time on the official The Last of Us podcast.
I put down my controller and I kept saying, no. I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight this person anymore.
This whole kind of cycle of violence and all this all these people left dead and maimed and traumatized, somehow something good came out of that at the end.
There's endure and survive physically, but what does that mean for your soul?
The official The Last of Us podcast is produced by PlayStation and Spoke Media. It's hosted by me, Christian Spicer, and written by Brigham Mosley. Our Sony PlayStation team includes Charlie Yater, Christian Cardona, and Carrie Surtees. Our Naughty Dog team includes Arnie Meyer and Scott Lowe. Our production team is Carson McCain, Kelly Kolf, Trey Jones, Reyes Mendoza, and Alicia Force. This episode was mixed by Evan Arnett, who contributed additional sound design and music. Today's episode included interviews with Neil Druckmann, Hallie Gross, Ian Alexander, Laura Bailey, and Ashley Johnson. Our executive producers are Aaliyah Tabakolian and Keith Reynolds. Thanks for listening.
I cling onto this Robert McKee quote, which is, people often ask, like, what is the responsibility of a writer? Is it to tell morally just stories? Is it to do fan service? Is it to whatever those things are? He's like, no, you don't have any of those responsibilities. You have just one responsibility, which is to tell something that you truly believe in, to be honest to yourself.
I can't let you leave. I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna fight you. Yes, you will. He's not a part of this. You made him a part of this. Okay. Go. Just take him.
Welcome back to the official The Last of Us podcast. I'm Christian Spicer. Man, it's been a treat. I need to start this episode by thanking all of you for going on this journey with me. Through the discussions of part 1 and now part 2, it's truly been a dream come true to be able to talk about my favorite game with some of the people who helped bring it to life. It has truly been an amazing experience, and to them and all of you for inviting us into your homes, into your cars, into your ears over these past weeks, it has been an honor and a privilege. So thank you for being here. Today we're going to bring it all home. We're going to cover the final beats of The Last of Us Part 2. And we're going to talk about the impact this game has already had on millions of lives, mine included. So enough babbling from me. Let's hear more from Neil Druckmann.
This whole journey for me was, I felt this horrible thing back in the day, and today I reflect on it and say, I'm glad I was never put in a situation where I would have done that, because I don't believe that's the right thing to do. And that conversation that I had with Hallie Gross, my co-writer on this project, at some point, we're arguing about something else with the story. And as we're arguing about it, all of a sudden I was like, hold on, something you just said just triggered something for me. It's like, what if Ellie doesn't kill Abby? And she's like, whoa, I didn't even think that was on the table. And I'm like, let's just go down this road, because something that feels correct. Based on this conversation we just had, that feels more honest than what we've had. And then we started talking about who Ellie is as a character. And while Ellie is violent and is, how her violence is tied more to her ego than Joel. Joel is very pragmatic, where Ellie holds a grudge. You see, like, the way Ellie kills David is very different than how Joel doesn't derive pleasure from it, and I think Ellie does. But beneath all that, I believe that Ellie is a good person and wants to do the right thing. Now, why she does it, that's maybe like, I don't want to get too much into that because that is a little bit open to interpretation, but she doesn't kill Abby, and in not killing her, she saves her humanity. So she might have lost everything, but she saved probably the most important thing for her.
Why does Abby think Ellie stopped?
In that moment, in the final moment?
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Does she not care?
She didn't give a fuck. She didn't give a fuck. Just don't stop killing me and I'm going to run. I'm done. I'm fucking done. You know? That rage is gone. It doesn't do anything. It's pretty amazing to get to that place, I think, after everything that they've been through. It sucks that you had to go through all of it to find that place, and hopefully Ellie will find that too.
She knows she made the right choice, at least, in choosing to stop the hate and the decision to keep hurting people. Does she have a purpose or know what that is yet? No. I don't think she knows what that is yet. And I think that is forever going to be her journey to try to find that now. And of course, I am a little bit of a pessimist, so I'm always like, no, there's no hope. There's no hope. But yeah, I feel like she leaves because I think she's going to at least try to find what her purpose is now, because it wasn't saving humanity. And she at least realized that killing Abby wasn't necessarily going to heal the hurt that she has from losing Joel. And now she has to just figure out how to heal from there.
I just thought of this, so I think it's more profound than it probably is. But
let's go. Let's hear it.
What if her purpose was saving humanity? It's just now much smaller. She saves her own, and now as a microcosm of those she interacts with, she can speak to personally the importance of it and what it means to keep them. So she won't save humanity from the outbreak, but she can save humanity, like what it means to be a human living in this world. Again, I'm probably going to hate this tomorrow, but for right now, I like it.
No, that makes me a little emotional, because that is such a beautifully positive way to look at it. And, you know, we can always speculate where she goes from here. I mean, I don't know, but I hope she realizes that. But I think that is a very beautiful way to look at it.
I'm now reminded of this, which was such a strange feeling because of the scope of the game, is there'd be like Team Ellie and Team Abby. And it is very much like we're making two different games, that for months we would just be with one set of cast members. And I'm there with, like, you know, Laura's taking the charge in a lot of it as Abby, and just shooting all these scenes and trying to figure out her character and her relationship with Lev and how do we make that relationship work. That was pretty challenging to, like, make sure that chemistry was working well. And then all of a sudden we'll be like, okay, now we're switching gears and we have Ashley available because she's shooting a TV show in New York. Okay, now let's shoot all this Ellie material. And it felt like, oh my God, we're making a different game. I forgot about these characters. And it felt like kind of refreshing. Like, oh my God, I miss all these characters. I forgot, oh, this is all part of the game as well. And you're doing these two things in parallel for so long and kind of jumping between these two worlds. And then all of a sudden when we shot the Abby Ellie scenes, like, it was so exciting. It was so exciting to finally see these characters meet and how they're going to interact. And right, like Ashley and Laura are like really good friends, and then they have to fight each other to the death in this really brutal way. And that's them, like, you know, like fighting on that beach fight. That final moment where you just hear, like, Ellie screaming. That's all there from the set of these two actors just going at it. Again, that was like a brutal scene to watch, but kind of exciting because it felt like everybody's at the top of their game at that point, just like giving it their all and just pouring like years of work out in this moment. That was exciting in a horrific sort of way, but exciting nonetheless.
I mean this in jest, but also seriously. What was it like to beat up your friend for so long? Because you were going at it.
Yeah, we were going at it, and Laura Bailey is one of my best friends. We've known each other for so long. We play D&D together weekly, and we actually didn't shoot together a lot in the game, of course, because we are on two separate journeys, and there's only a handful of scenes that we shot together on. And that ending scene, all of them were hard. None of them were scenes where, it was just, hey, it's a fun day at work. And in particular, that last scene was, man, throwing yourself into sort of trying to be in the place where Ellie was by that point in the game, and these two people, I mean, Ellie in particular, in a place of extreme hurt and anger and hatred, and directing that towards one of your best friends was really weird and really hard. But Laura and I just talking with each other and trusting each other and just saying, like, let's go, let's do this, let's get into it. And it was hard, but we did it. And we just hugged and cried when we were done, because it was just, it's weird having those feelings come out in general. And when it's towards someone that you deeply care about, it's tough, man. You're like, you want to sort of say, hey, obviously, like, this isn't real. I love you so much. And you both know that, of course, but it was a pretty amazing experience. Like, that whole week of shooting those scenes was pretty special.
I think what made it work so well is that insane amount of trust that's there. And it was there with me and Troy too, as one of my best friends. You're able to go further. You're able to go to a darker place because they have your back in that moment. And like in that final fight when me and Ashley were wailing on each other, I mean, we went hard. And when we finally wrapped it, we cried and we hugged, and yeah, we were able to go further with it because of the relationship that we have.
What was your favorite moment of this entire process?
This is 5 years, man, thinking back. I think it's been getting to have this experience with Ashley, because I know how much the game means to her, and it means so much to me, and just both of us put our everything into the performances, and being able to feel this like anticipation of experiencing it. And we've been, texting back and forth, and just being able to see what she did on days when I didn't get to see it has been so amazing. And I'm just, it's stupid, but I think my favorite thing about it has been just how proud I am of my friends working on it. And everybody's so good, and it's just a triumph. It really is amazing. And I just, yeah. I mean, like, I did the scene where it's a flashback with Ellie and Joel and the bloater, and that moment when Joel saves her. And I started crying. I was like, thank you, Joel. This is so good. And I was so stressed, and it felt so amazing to have somebody have your back in that world.
And then you killed him. Cool.
I know. And then I fucking killed him.
Real talk. Like, Neil won't listen to this. Don't worry. It's cool. Do you like Abby?
Man.
Remember, Troy is listening, though. So do you like Abby?
Yeah, man. Okay. I feel like there was a big turn for me. That when we finally see Abby's side of Joel's killing, and we've already gone on this whole journey with Abby at that point, where we have a new perspective, and we've been so angry with her. And we've seen her agony. And we've seen what she's gone through. And she finally got to do what she's been wanting to do, but she is still in turmoil. And, when you see the flip side of that scene, and it's just on Abby, and everybody's saying, no, stop, leave Abby alone, or leave Ellie alone. She saves Ellie's life in that moment. She very easily could have done what Ellie does throughout the entire game, but she doesn't. She stops with Joel and she leaves.
Stop! We're done.
And I think she realizes quicker than Ellie that the hate has to stop there and she's done. And when I got to that point in the game, I was like, ooh, is she a better person than Ellie? When they meet again in the theater, and Abby says,
"You killed my friends. We let you both live, and you wasted it."
And it's true. I mean, they only killed Joel, but Ellie and her pain, how is she any better with the choices that she made? We always try to justify when it's our side of the story. I mean, we all do it. We feel like it's the right thing to do when we've been wronged and justice needs to be served. But when does that cycle end? I feel like that's the whole point of the video game. It doesn't end. Each person feels so justified in their actions and the things that they do. And because we have a whole other video game of these characters that we love, and they're tough questions. I mean, even when I got to the end of the game, when you're walking down to the beach in Santa Barbara, I put down my controller, and even though I knew it was going to happen, I kept saying, no. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight this person anymore. And I've never felt that in a video game.
This is kind of potentially a shitty question, but I think there could be fun in the conversation.
Please.
Why the game couldn't have ended with Ellie and Potato sitting on the tractor?
Oh, man.
Why can't that be the end of this game?
I think that doesn't honor what Ellie has gone through. I think, yeah, she's sitting on the tractor, and we have that in Dina, right? Like, Dina goes through this whole ordeal, and she says to Ellie basically, like, you think you're the only one struggling, I'm struggling too, but for him and for you, I deal with it. And Dina is very much in a position where she can deal with it, where however loud all of this pain is, she's able to deal with it. But you got to show the other side of that. It's like PTSD, trauma, that's not a choice. And it certainly hits people at different volumes. And it doesn't talk about this cyclical nature of violence. These girls aren't done. This wasn't consensual. This fight wasn't over. And you want to take Ellie to the point that Abby got to. You want to give her the same choice as Abby. Because until Ellie consents to release this hunt, until Ellie's subconscious is willing to let this fight go, it's going to always be a what if.
You never really talked to me about Kat.
Yeah, because there isn't much to talk about.
Yow.
I got the impression that you didn't really like her.
I don't care about her one way or the other.
Okay.
No, I think she's a talented artist. I've grown to like that tattoo of yours.
Well, that's so big of you.
And I think she wasn't right for you.
Interesting.
Shut up.
Okay.
I would love to take a minute or so to talk to you about the tattoo, right? I mean, I've seen in real life people getting versions of their own, even before the game came out, which, is...
Bold move.
Yeah, that's... Indeed. But I'd love to get kind of your take on that and what that tattoo meant to Ellie, what it meant to the character.
Sure. It's funny because I actually didn't know during the shooting of the game. I knew what the tattoo was, but I didn't know that the moth is from the fret of the guitar that Joel gave her. And you see that in the first scene in the game. And I grabbed my heart and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this. And I think it does feel like a natural choice for Ellie to get a tattoo on top of that. I mean, she's almost embarrassed about her immunity because she just doesn't know what to do with it, because it's meant nothing in a way up until this point. And she first covered it in a very painful act of covering it with an acid burn, and that in itself is a very strong choice. But I think in sort of with her previous girlfriend, Kat, and we also see in the game that Ellie has become an artist, and I love the journaling mechanic in the game. I think it's so cool. The lyrics, the drawings, all of it, I love it. But I think as she got older and started to heal, I'm sure she designed that tattoo, and obviously the gift from Joel of the guitar really meant something to her. And she wanted to get a tattoo over the bite mark, over the burn. And I think it's really cool.
Again, I have to go to so much I learned this from Robert McKee, but he talks about internal symbolism versus external symbolism, that often amateur art uses a lot of external symbolism. So you'll bring in something like a religious iconography that already has all this weight to it, and you're trying to leverage the weight outside the story to bring the story more weight. Versus what becomes more interesting is internal symbolism, where you start to build a new meaning for something based on the events of the story. So the moth, again, outside the story, the moth can mean death, and it has all these other meanings that I was much less interested in. The one thing that's, first maybe I should talk about where the moth initially came from. We hired this woman, Natalie Hall, who's a tattoo artist, to design Ellie's tattoo. We had this idea that to show growth and years of passage, we wanted Ellie to have this tattoo that she would put over the bite mark to help hide this bite mark. So she designed these kind of ferns, and she put this moth in there. And the first idea was like, oh, that moth looks a lot like a firefly. That's kind of interesting. So, right, firefly already has this internal meaning within the world, and here's this insect that's pretty close to it. And then as we kept working on the story, it just took on greater and greater meaning to, well, one, it started to symbolize Ellie because it's such a prominent feature of her character design. And then we had this, again, so many things are just lucky happenstance of, we had this relationship that started developing with Taylor Guitar. They wanted to release a guitar based on The Last of Us. We're like, oh, well, we have a guitar in this game. What if we collaborate together to design this new guitar? And then I believe it was Ashley Swedowski, our lead character designer, that had the idea of like, what if we put the moth as an inlay in the guitar? Right away, I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. Like, that's how Ellie got the idea for the moth on her arm. But now because Joel gives her that guitar, now that moth the meaning has evolved, it becomes to represent the relationship between Ellie and Joel. And we already had, like, the outline already had that she can't play guitar anymore at the end, which symbolizes the cost of everything that has happened to her. Now that even is more poetic, if Joel gives her this guitar, it has the moth on it, the moth is on her arm. So the moth just became this greater symbolism for this whole journey.
I'm curious where she is at the end when she can't even play the guitar anymore. Does she have hope? Does she have joy? What does she have then, other than maybe her humanity, which she found a way to save?
Yeah, I know at least in shooting those scenes, because all of that last bit is mocapped of walking back into the house. seeing that Dina and JJ are gone, picking up the guitar, trying to play it again. I didn't feel a lot of hope. And she's making a conscious decision at the end of the game to, she leaves again. We don't know where, but she leaves that behind. And I think you're right. I think the only thing that maybe is hopeful about this journey is that she has found her humanity. At the end of the day, that's kind of all we can hope for any of us, is hoping that in these situations that we put ourselves in, that at the end of the day, we're going to choose humanity and to try to do the right thing. And obviously it took a journey of doing very terrible things for her to get there. But I think that for me, that was the only thing that was hopeful, because it's sad. She lost a lot. And it took a lot for her to realize that.
I'd love to talk about the title screen, or the press any button screen, whatever it's called in the game. The beginning, it's the boat and fog and dent, and then it literally didn't hit me until, I don't know, maybe I am dreaming about The Last of Us, and it's Catalina.
It is Catalina.
And that feels like maybe the most hopeful ending of any of your games. I don't see them on the boat, so for all I know, but the boat's not destroyed, but maybe they didn't make it. But I'd love to talk about that and kind of the decision and for those kind of New Game Plus Easter eggs in the menu screen and what you hope people take away from it.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation. John Sweeney, co-art director, was really had ideas for the title screen, and while we talked about showing it as the guitar, and then when you press start, the camera will pull out and you see Joel polishing the guitar, and that felt right in a lot of ways. But then as we started making the story, and we knew everything is heading to this showdown at this beach, that's where it's all going to come together. And it felt, there were a version of the story where we even started the game with Ellie just sobbing, sitting on this beach with waves kind of washing around her. And there's you see blood in the water. And then we cut to the beginning. But it just felt okay, there's flash forward and flashbacks. And it's just the beginning was getting a little bit too muddy, and we needed to simplify it to make it clear. And then I don't remember, just as we're brainstorming, the idea of starting on the boat, and then I was oh, that's kind of exciting. There's this ominous image that we could leave you with, and then everything is heading towards that ominous image. And then we talked about, Abby leaves and goes to Catalina, and they're talking about this round building. We could then change the menu and show the boat made it, and end on them as you said, it's kind of a hopeful note that at least they made it to this beach. What happened afterward, again, what really happens in the future, you don't know. And there's something about, I think last time we talked a lot about how death often doesn't happen the way we expect it to, and there's so much randomness to life that Joel didn't know taking that action at the hospital will lead to his eventual demise, but it did. And likewise, Abby didn't know that sparing Ellie in the theater will eventually lead to her survival. Because if Abby didn't spare Ellie and then just went to Santa Barbara with Lev, she would be dead. She would have died on that post. And there's something kind of poetic about that this whole kind of cycle of violence and all this all these people left dead and maimed and traumatized, somehow something good came out of that at the end. And it felt kind of cool to just present it with the menu and see if people pick up on it.
The title screen is an indication of hope, right? It's Lev and Abby. Maybe they've arrived, without, in the true Naughty Dog way of not spelling it out, maybe they've arrived at Catalina, maybe they found the Fireflies, maybe they found community and home, and a version of community and home that is more stable than what they've experienced in Seattle and more akin to what Abby experienced at the hospital. So I think that's the hope, but also leaving some mystery. You know, we don't know who the Fireflies are now. We don't know what their focus is now. Is it still finding a cure? Have they moved on? And why Catalina?
I'm curious, in your professional experience, your thoughts on kind of that. I'm going to do it a disservice by calling it an open-ended ending, but, you know, leaving room for interpretation in your professional writing experience, but also in the media you consume, your approach to that. Does that leave you fulfilled and kind of excited?
To me, it's really exciting. Like, look, we're not being prescriptive and you're being allowed to take away what you will, and being left with the idea that people's stories are never really done. Even when they're dead, their stories aren't done. You know, like where Ellie goes when she leaves the farmhouse. Is she going to Dina? Is she just going off? Is she going back to the Fireflies? Like, you have no idea, but you know that she is changed, right? So that her new stasis is a changed, more wizened, wiser gal than the sweet one that we saw at a dance years before. But it leaves a lot of room to say she's still growing, she's still changing. Her story's not finished. No one's story is finished. I think it makes the endings feel more human, more relatable.
What does hope look like in the world of The Last of Us? And would you say it's ever obtainable?
That's a good question. I was talking also, funnily enough, to someone this morning about just the journey of what it's been like to make this game and just the ups and downs of making it. And, you know, right now we had some people that finished the game for the first time and said really kind of like wonderful things about it and how it moved them. And it's like, it feels like this really positive moment. And there's this anticipation of everyone wanting to play it. And you go back a few weeks and it was really sad. It was like we had all these leaks and there was all this negative feelings that people had about the game. And we couldn't really go and defend it and say what's right and what's wrong with all those leaks. And it was kind of depressing for a lot of us. For a while, and then had like a lot of conversations about, okay, what are the things you could help and what are the things you can't? There's certain things that just you cannot change. They are what they are, and you just have to tolerate and accept them. And I think hope, to answer your question, is like knowing that things are going to be okay. They might not be ideal, but they're going to be okay. And, you know, there's a lot of like Buddhist stuff that I've been recently getting into of like, again, the idea of like, there's no enlightenment without suffering, that, you know, we're all going to get old and we're all going to die. It's just about what do you make with the time you have? Like, how do you enjoy the present? And the present might be kind of miserable in some ways, but it's still saying, look, I am alive and I might be in a crappy situation, but like, what are the things that are going well for me? And what do I have to look forward to tomorrow?
Is that the same, that the hope in the game? Is it kind of the same thing that characters are looking for and try, or perhaps maybe trying to find those moments?
I think so. I think both Abby and Ellie are resisting and fighting the reality of the situation, that something horrible has happened to them and they think they could change reality. They can like force reality to change and will it back to how it was, but they can't. You can't fight and beat up your way to bring in a loved one back. It just, that's never going to happen. So how do you deal with it? How do you move on? And so much as the story is about moving on past trauma, moving on past a really horrible thing that happens to you. Losing a loved one, losing a relationship. And they both at the end in different ways come to terms with what happens and decide to move on.
How do any of these groups last? Is there a path forward for any of them, or does the fungus win?
I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing is like, I think stories and maybe traditional Hollywood stories have taught us to look for closure, to answer that, like, what is the end? To who wins? Is there a cure? Like, does this group, like, and it's like, that's not life. The story is trying to reflect, like, for example, again, I'm going to talk back, the world that we live in is like, do we survive? Is there going to be a nuclear holocaust? Is there going to be some outbreak that kills a whole bunch of us? Is there going to be war? It's like, yeah, all those things probably, like, at some point are going to happen. Hopefully not the nuclear holocaust part. But countries rise and fall, groups rise and fall. And we just wanted to show that and make you experience that in the story, that, the Seraphites and the WLF eventually kind of wipe each other out in that last battle. That's what we wanted. Like, it's all in chaos. I'm sure there'll be survivors, but it's not going to be the groups there were before that attack on the island. Jackson, for now, is fine, but who knows what will happen in the future? You don't know. The Fireflies are trying to regroup, and Abby and Lev might reconnect with them, but we don't know what's going to happen there. Ellie's going to go off on her own. Is she going to be okay? Is she going to find happiness? Is she going to go back to Dina? I don't know. That's kind of like the thing with life. It's like all you know is what happened now, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So every group is trying to do their best to survive, and some are surviving longer than others, but I can't answer that.
The hope that we see in this game is largely from investing, right? It's in investing in relationships, investing in community, investing in security, safety, happiness, art, bringing productivity and positivity to the world. And we see that when Ellie and Dina build their farm. We see that when, all these members of Jackson are contributing to helping the town. We see it with Joel investing in Ellie by trying to make her happy and taking her to the museum, and investing in time as a father and making this day about her. And, you see in that first guitar beat at the very beginning of the game, like, Ellie's a little standoffish. She's a little wary. And right up until the very end of Museum, we're back to old Ellie. Like, Joel has invested in Ellie and really regained her trust, regained that warmth, regained that intimacy and friendship and happiness in this scrappy kid, right? And obviously the lie encroaches and encroaches and encroaches. But to me, the hope is putting energy towards positive investments, which I think is also true for the real life, for us every day.
There's a wonderful line, I think it's in the WLF in the stadium, of, they killed the only person that had a chance to make a cure. Mm-hmm. And what I liked about that moment, and I'm sure I'm butchering when and how it happened, but it feels very real for their truth, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the world's truth.
Sure.
But it's still very much their world's truth. When people are done with the game, they've walked away from it, what do you want people to be left with?
I guess the biggest hope is the one I've had all along, which is I hope it sticks with them. I hope that it was challenging in some part in interesting ways, not in just kind of like, oh, that's kind of there for shock value. And the worst thing that could happen in my eyes is like, if people are just like, yeah, okay, that was it. That was it, and move on and never discuss it again. Because for me, it's like the ideas behind it is stuff that I've wrestled with for a really long time and like for years, and I still wrestle with that. Even now, when those leaks were they just hurt me personally, and I know they hurt people on the team so much that when we found out who did it and how it happened, again, it wasn't anybody in Naughty Dog. Initial reaction was like, they've hurt us so much without even realizing what they've done. It's like, and then like, I think someone said, it's like, have you not played The Last of Us Part 2? and it was like such like an interesting thing. I was like, oh, right. The whole thing with this game is like, how can you think about the other side? Like, okay, how can I put myself in this other person's shoes and try to understand their point of view? And it really kind of calmed me down, and to say, it's like, okay, it happened. and just to come to acceptance of that. And that just helped me kind of really forget about the person that did that. It was like, oh man, if someone else can have that feeling about something, whether it's like they have a fight with someone politically on Twitter, and they say really horrible things, and they're able to let it go and move on, or just say like, I might disagree with it, but I get the other side. That to me would be like the greatest compliment if someone told me that, like that's what they took away from the game.
The Last of Us Part 1 has been described as a love story, and Part 2 has been described as violence and the cycle of violence and what that means and what it does. I'm curious, in your opinion, what is The Last of Us as a whole? What does The Last of Us represent?
Like, what does it mean? What is our place? It's funny because, like, all these questions that you've been asking, and is it possible to find hope? And I just feel like this game is there's endure and survive physically, but what does that mean for your soul? What does that mean mentally? How do you live with yourself?
What's worth it,
Mm-hmm.
I could sit here and just mull that over for far longer than we have, or I have hard disk space for. What's so funny is I try to think of a better word, but the word that I keep coming back to is a story of redemption. Because unilaterally across every character, I can see that as a commonality of every character just wanting redemption. It's not about revenge. Revenge has a very short wick, and everybody just wants to feel like they can be redeemed. So ultimately, I say that The Last of Us is a story of redemption.
But I would say it is about enduring and surviving, right? It is about your world is going to get rocked. Bad things are going to happen to the people you love. Bad things are going to happen to the world around you. But we keep on finding things to fight for. We keep on finding reasons to be good to each other. And so often, our reason to fight is for those that we love. Sometimes it's easier to be there for somebody else than be there for yourself. In the case of Abby, you see her with Lev, and she's a much better person for Lev than she would ever be for herself. So I would say that, on the whole, this game is about resiliency. How do you keep picking yourself back up? Which I think is a theme that, and a concept that we all need, especially right now.
Boy. I think, for me at least, when everything is stripped away, our possessions, our finances, our external shit, you're left with human connection and human relationships. And I think that's really, at the end of the day, what is important, is your connection with another human being. And if that's taken away, what do you have? We start to see that in the first game, where the connection is made between Joel and Ellie on this journey together. That's what the game is about, is their connection, their relationship. It's about how these two people made a connection in a very, very tough time, in a very tough world. And the reason he makes the decision he makes is because he realizes that I've made a connection with something, and that's the only thing that's kind of worth living for right now. I feel like that's confirmed in the second game. It's a different journey of getting to that, but Ellie goes back home. Dina's not there, but she goes back because she also realized, I had love. I had this thing, I had this connection, and that, at the end of the day, is the most important thing. Take it all away, take everything else. That's all that you have left.
I don't know if I'm going to have a succinct answer. It's funny because it's something like, I'm sure for marketing we wrote stuff down, but that stuff, it's always like you're trying to distill it down to too little, right? It's like for marketing, we say The Last of Us 2 is about hate, but it's really about dealing with trauma and like love and how do you move on from grief and all these other interesting facets to it. But as you ask me this, and I don't think everybody has ever asked me, like, try to put the two games together and say, okay, what is this whole thing about? And it's kind of an exploration of love and all the facets around it, meaning the beauty that comes within it, the happiness that comes with it, the grief that comes with it, the insanity that can come with it, right? When you lose or when someone you love is hurt. So, yeah, I guess it's that, right? Everything that happens, all the choices these characters make, good or bad, it all comes from a place of love. And us as human beings, it's like we commit often the worst atrocities because of love.
After all we've been through.
I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's
I'm not
Ellie.
The watch is broken.
No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
Everything that I've done.
Oh, baby girl.
It's alright. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me. Oh. Just take him. It can't be for nothing.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
This concludes the official The Last of Us podcast. Until next time, find something to fight for. Listen, if you've enjoyed listening to the show, tell your friends, your family, your enemies, tell your Ellie and your Abby. And if you really love this show, please rate it and review it in your podcast app. It helps people find us. And be sure to stay subscribed. You never know. We might be back one day with more behind-the-scene goodness you won't want to miss. The official The Last of Us podcast is produced by PlayStation and Spoke Media. It's hosted by me, Christian Spicer, and written by Brigham Mosley. Our Sony PlayStation team includes Charlie Yater, Christian Cardona, and Carrie Surtees. Our Naughty Dog team includes Arnie Meyer and Scott Lowe. Our production team is Carson McCain, Kelly Kolf, Trey Jones, Reyes Mendoza, and Alicia Force. This episode was mixed by Evan Arnett, who contributed additional sound design and music. Today's episode included interviews with Neil Druckmann, Hallie Gross, Laura Bailey, Troy Baker, and Ashley Johnson. Our executive producers are Aaliyah Tavakolian and Keith Reynolds. Special thanks to Jonielle Kastner, Caroline Hamilton, Becky Dodd, Lauren Munez, Samara Still, Vivian Alcala, Dina Bakir, Rob Krekel, and Joshua Bradley. Thanks for listening.